Hello, BookTube. I, what the heck? 42 people are here in my first minute, in my first few seconds. What happened to me starting the live stream with nobody here and then building up to 3 or 4 or 10? 42 people in 15 seconds? Anyway, anyway, I'm sorry that I'm late. I was delayed not only by the bean, who is being extra divish today because we have 55-degree temperature as opposed to negative 12-degree temperature. So she's being extra needy and elaborate outside and inside because she can go wherever she wants now. She hates the freezing cold as much as I do. But also because I just finished watching a video that is threatening to throw me off topic. I was going to talk about books, but I just watched a hiking video. I watched a hiking video on YouTube. A couple talking about hiking in Nevada deserts, hiking specifically in the Mojave Desert. And they went down a list of things. Make sure you take your cell phone with you. Make sure you have an active and accurate GPS system. Make sure that you wear rattlesnake leg guards, kind of greaves that go all the way up to your knees. Make sure that you carry an advanced med kit complete with antivenom. Make sure that you have left notifications to everyone you know where you're going down to the last detail. Make sure you don't hike alone and make sure you don't hike for any long periods of time. And I'm watching this video. They're just saying these things matter of factly. Just, what kind of a fool needs this advice? But we'll go through the very basic stuff here. Thinking, I have hiked alone in the Mojave Desert many, many times and in the Sonora Desert many, many times. Not any of those things, not any of those things at all. And I'm still here. I was doing it wrong that whole time. I'm retroactively embarrassed by by those by those adventures where I would be gone for weeks at a time. Another item that they mentioned was never go into a cave that you don't know. Never go into a strange cave. I've done that many times. So anyway, oh, good Lord, look at all these people all saying hi to each other. The archive is here. Monet Doyle is here. Micah Cummins is here. The birthday boy. Aaron Hook is here. Good Lord. How am I supposed to go on with my sexy discussion when there are 50 people here already? There's already a chat hearing. Andy Curly Brooks says, Jesus, why even go to the Mojave Desert? Well, you'd only ask that if you hadn't seen it. It is amazing. It's an alternate planet and a very hostile planet, but it's amazing. Morning in the Mojave is amazing. Morning in the Sonora Desert is amazing, but the Sonora can be brutal, and so can the Mojave. I guess they kill people. And watching this couple, they were going down a checklist that was very basic. It was elementary, rudimentary stuff, and I didn't do any of it. I didn't do any of it, and I did it many times. And they didn't mention hiking with dogs. I guess that's a no-no too, probably. Yes, yes. Cheryl Holzenbake says our search and rescue folks would beg you not to go out on foot. I went out foot everywhere, all over the world, not just the deserts of America, but the deserts of everywhere else. I went in the chaparral of everywhere else, the most inhospitable places in the country, in the world. I went on foot. Maybe the most inhospitable. I haven't experienced what they're like in Australia. Australia can be a pretty hard place. Oh, a view from the bar is here. Better question for Steve is why didn't you stay in the Mojave? Well, that's a little harsh. Perhaps you should bro hug it out on a chat, a podcast of some kind. Kevin J.N. says, hey, Steve, I went down a rabbit hole on your chunker videos and started reading The Life of Samuel Johnson after finishing A Distant Mirror. You've already finished A Distant Mirror. Reading Guy says, my question, how did Steve survive his world travels? Luck or his sexy charms? It was a lot of luck, I'm sure. It was also a lot of situational, what we now call situational awareness. Plus a lot of the basic stuff that these two young kids were talking about on their channel. Their heavily monetized channel. They make more in a month than I do in a year. A lot of the stuff that they were talking about, I didn't know not to worry about. I didn't know that I didn't have it. Yuri Not Ure says, hello, Steve. Is this a stream about reading the desert? About a desert? No, it's not. We have a subject. I have a subject about reading that I want to talk about. It's just there's a huge chat. There was 70 people here in less than 5 minutes. Taylor Brock says, how did the cold nights go? Deserts can be pretty brutal, hence the caves, hence hence the the value of shelter. Although these kids on this YouTube video were saying under no circumstances go into a cave for any reason. Uh, Aaron Hook says, "Well, Steve, I'm not surprised you didn't do any of those things as you are not built as other men." I assure you, I am. I just never thought about it. I had other things on my mind. I guess I did. I would have failed. I fail every checklist that they did that they said, every single one. Monet Doyle, I've been to campgrounds, but never been hiking. I did a huge amount of hiking, huge amount. If we want to call it that. Well, I don't think I or anybody called it that when I was doing it, but I did a huge amount of it, just gigantic. Tramp all over the world on my feet and with my dogs. Uh, yeah, Randy Ray, or no, that reading guy says, "I never thought about it." Famous last words, and that's true. These two kids on this YouTube channel were talking about how many hikers overestimate their ability, underestimate the dangers of the terrain, encounter something they aren't prepared for, and are nowhere where they can ask for help. So I guess maybe yes, I guess maybe that is true. Randy Ray says, "Hey Steve, I'm so excited to catch one of your live streams. My roommate is cooking pork chops while I watch." That's a pretty nice roommate. Jay Scott Phillips is here. Our car got stuck in the snow on top of Hunter Mountain years ago, and we had to walk 20 miles into Death Valley to get help. Young, stupid, and lucky. Well, I don't know about stupid. You have an adventure you can tell for the rest of your life. Uh, Fit Nerd says, "Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and push that notification bell." Don't do any of those things. Don't do any of those things. You can, as long as you're here to talk to me, you don't have to do any of those things. I never make calls to action. Not that it would matter. I honestly, I mean, I joke that this channel is never going to reach 14K, but I honestly don't think it's going to happen. Subscriptions just don't happen anymore in the way they used to on BookTube. If the algorithm finds you, yes, but it used to be they could grow anyway. Now I think YouTube is clamping down on any kind of success, and they view growth as success that it doesn't involve the algorithm. I think YouTube is more and more thinking you have to play ball for us to do anything for you, and that's only one step away from saying you have to play ball to use our platform. Uh, it could be. We will see. That reading guy says, "What is our topic today?" Our topic, if I could get to it, 75 people in 7 minutes. Our topic is reading. More specifically, vetting. How do you vet the books that you start? If you don't know, let's say you don't know anything about them, so you're not going on the momentum of a series or a character or even an author. So you're going completely cold into a new author, a new book, new kind of book. I thought about it because I saw a video on Troy Tradup's channel where he read 5, I think, or 6 Amazon sample chapters, sample books. A lot of you will know that, where Amazon will give you a sample of a book and you can read a little bit of it to see whether or not you want to go on, whether or not you want to commit. And I did a video of myself of my own on that, reading Amazon samples, and I did that. I read Amazon samples for about an hour today, and it got me thinking about questions that other critics and I in this room over wine and calzones have brought up often, which is how do you vet a book? How do you assess it in the first few pages or chapters? How do you do that? What are you aware of the factors that are involved, or is it more of a gut reaction? Uh, uh, wait a minute. Anti Gaia says, "Here's the short answer. Ask Steve." Well, I'm not talking about the assessment of a whole book. I'm talking about at what point, where is the point in reading a brand new book where you know whether or not you like it? What is that tumbler? What are those feelings? I always used to characterize it to fellow critics as saying that I am reading for that electric charge, that thing that sets your hairs on end. And I always used to characterize it as something that I could spot fairly early in a book. Almost right away, I would know whether or not the author knows what they're doing to the extent of producing that feeling. Isn't that right, baby? Isn't that right, little baby? She's up there. It'd be great if I could position this so that you can see her and me at the same time. I know you don't want to do that. You mainly want to see her. But there she is, right in front of my shoulder. But anyway, I'm missing the chat here. Spaminator, nursing a shoulder injury, another one from wrestling last night. Wrestling is stupid. I quit. Just stay home and read instead. Trust me. Monet Doyle says, "I only read books by authors I am familiar with." I would never do that myself. So I guess this question absolutely does not appeal to you since you are restricting yourself to a tiny handful of authors that you already know. I could not imagine reading like that. So this question really applies to people who don't do that, who don't read what they already know. Uh, CM Lady says, if I'm not interested in a book after 2 pages, I'm out. Life is too short to force myself to read a book. 2 pages is not very much space. And some books need time to unfold, and you need time to acclimate to them. Don't you ever worry that you're not giving them enough time? Jenny Park says, I'll read everything to the end. I still can't DNF. Or I'd say the opposite. The idea of stopping a book after 2 pages is unthinkable to you. Um, and right, Extra Delight says, what about slow burn novels? And they do exist. You would completely miss them. And they have genuine appeal. They have genuine payoffs. So I wonder whether or not you would do that. Fit Nerd. Oh, did I lose you? No. I try to keep it as simple as possible. If by the end of the sample I want to read more, then I will purchase it. That is exactly my own yardstick. I figure that if the sample is a chapter or two, I read a few today. There were 3 or 4 chapters. If you haven't hooked me by then slow burn or not, I'm probably not going to continue. I'm probably not going to do it. Whereas if you have hooked me, then you deserve my money, not just my time, but my money. Kevin JN says, I used to judge by covers and literary reviews. Now I pretty much rely on you and other critics. I plow through to the end no matter how much I might dislike it. But what about all the books out there that you may be interested in that I don't talk about? I talk about a lot of books, but I don't talk about all of them. Then how do you judge? Uh, Omnipotent Poobah says, that's different for fiction than nonfiction. I think you're normally willing to give fiction much more benefit of the doubt to see how it develops. Nonfiction, you can tell a lot sooner. I'm the exact opposite. Usually the exact opposite. Andrew Russo, I tend to find that a brand new book that gets me going, has good flow, i.e., the prose paints characters and setting that draw me in, and the pages almost turn themselves. I agree, but how long does it take for you to sense that? How much time are you willing to give? I was thinking about that today when I was reading all of those samples, and I was thinking, uh, okay, you're developing gut reactions to these books, definitely. Or I hate to say gut reactions because I'm thinking they'd be critical, so they'd be mental reactions. Although I should remind you, even your gut reactions take place in your brain. Your gut doesn't do any thinking. But I was reading these samples and I was thinking, well, okay, you haven't read a sample yet where you didn't know at the end whether or not it was any good and what kind of good it was. What determines that? What are the factors involved? Shoemaker was here and is now gone. Oh my God. Well, this is the problem when you have almost 100 people in 12 minutes, is that you start to lose people. Uh, let's get back to Shoemaker. Where was Shoemaker? 'Cause I don't want to miss him. Uh, Shoemaker says, a good start to a book is when it goes in my head when I put it aside. Agreed. Spaminator, I give a book 20%. At that point, if the author hasn't pulled me in, I have to assume they're not going to. That's a fairly sizable percentage. Matt's Bookshelf, an author himself. What does he have to say on the subject? I started reading I, Claudius, my first Graves book, a few days ago, and was put off initially by how much recapping of history there was. Now, a few days later, and I cannot put the book down. I, Claudius would be a perfect example of what I'm talking about, of what you miss if you cut the book loose after a few chapters. It would be a perfect example of that. You're right. It is unputdownable, but it doesn't start that way. It builds that way. Uh, Trish Bovell, I usually give a book about 100 pages. Micah Cummins, I give a book the first 100 pages or so. Randy L. Ray, when I'm looking for something new to read, I'll Google one of my favorite authors along with the word influences. Just try to find authors who have influenced the author I already like. I would worry about that. Something about it strikes me as a very gated community. I would do that, of course. I would do that just to see what would crop up, but I don't think that would be my go-to custom. Some Bunny, I'm one of those people who go by my gut. I once saw a writing workshop focused on writing a killer first chapter, and I found it so off-putting that the workshop was even needed. So yes, my gut, 100%. Alex Hardy, how could you really get from 2 pages of Dune? How much could you really get from 2 pages of Dune? That would be an interesting question to ask. That'd be an interesting question to analyze. I think you would definitely sense the intelligence of Dune right away in 2 pages. I think you would sense a lot of the level of complexity of the world building. I'm not so sure that you wouldn't be drawn into Dune in 2 pages, but I see what you mean. So much, would not be there. Alan Black, I started and finished Kingdom of the Sand by Andrew Holland today. He just draws me in and keeps me going with his fluidity and engaging narrative. That's what I look for in a book. Me too. The Archive, I tend to go with 50 pages. If I'm not hooked by then, I'm out. Gypsy Rose says, only book I have ever DNF'd was Twilight. It took me 2 pages to make the decision. 2 pages. Randy Ray says, as far as giving up on books, it's almost entirely whimsical. If I get bored, I move on. I wouldn't trust my boredom. I wouldn't trust it as a barometer at all. There are plenty of books I ended up loving that bored me at one point or another. Monet Doyle says, if a book doesn't grab me by the first page, I'm out. Good Lord. Auntie Gaia says, C. Cone of the criteria is making sure the author is not a smug show off on the page. For example, Dickens, yeesh. Well, if the author's, oh, are you all right, baby girl? Are you nice and comfy wumpy? Hmm. Here, there you go. If the author's a show off, you'll know it right away. I think you'll know it right away. Anti-Gaius. Oh no, I've already read that. Jenny Parks, teach me how to DNF. I'm always hoping a book will end well. Yes, yes, that's the heart of non-DNFers is that eternal optimism. Amber Lee V says I can tell pretty early, like a chapter or two, whether or not a book is going to be good. But I read the whole book regardless. If it's not good, I have to know what's not working. You mean to say that you're reading a book, you're in chapter 2, you know it's not good, and you're still going to read the rest of the book? Good Lord. Aaron Hook, I usually work on basis of the genre it's in, whether it's by an author I know or if someone I trust recommends the book to me. Cheryl Holsenpig says, I have to recognize characters that I'd like to know better. Just like in a room full of people, God forbid, yes, spoken like an introvert, I would either stick around or quickly scoot away based upon opening conversation. But some books don't open that way. Think about Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. You've got that sprawling natural description before you get any people. J. Scott Phillips, I read the first Outlander book last year. I often felt like setting it aside, but then something always happened that pulled me back in. I'm glad I kept reading. Outlander would be another really good example of a book that doesn't exercise narrative pyrotechnics. It has a spell, a definitely worthwhile spell, but there are no pyrotechnics. You'd be good luck even perceiving that spell in the first couple of sections. Oh, wait, did I lose you? Did I lose the chat again? I'm just gonna, as long as it's not booting me out, I'm gonna try and get everybody's comment because these are all fascinating. We're staying on point without even wanting to. Evil Jasu, if I have faith in the author, and the first time they make a creative decision I don't understand, I'm hooked. How interesting. Extra Delight says, how would we find a Chekhov in contemporary terms? This is part of what I worry about. In terms of, it's not even contemporary terms, but in terms of this chat, you would miss Chekhov. You would especially miss Guy de Maupassant. You would miss him completely. And you wouldn't want to, is what I'm trying to say. Danielle, Bluegrass Reader, says, hi, Steve and Frida. Yes, Frida's here. She was up on her window, but she has decided to sack out right next to me. We've had a tiring day because we were cooped in for 2 days with sub-freezing temperatures. And so we had a tiring day today to make up for it. D Temple 54 says, I will read history/biography right up until I find a glaring error. Okay, but then you stop? What if you're enjoying the reading experience? The error breaks it anyway? Oh. Oh. Some Bunny says, I meant to say I go by gut reactions plus previous experience/background knowledge as both a reader and a writer. Andrew Russell is addressing me. He's adding me, but you're in my chat. So I don't know why you would need to do that. I can often tell within 50 pages, but I've been known to be surprised by the last 50 pages. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. Well, no, I'm not really asking for a hard and fast rule. More like the kind of consensus that I'm getting here, which is pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting to see. This is a wide variety of readers. Cheryl Holsenbeck says, first chapter is usually enough to find out if I want to know more about the characters. Yuri Not Ure says, if I'm not interested in the book after reading it for 2 weeks, I am so very out. Oh, good Lord. Well, I don't know. I have no experience with that. Auntie Gaia says, another example of literary show-off is Operation Shylock. Gives you a dizzying case of nausea. I'm going to disagree. Andrew Curly Book says writing is a big deal for me. If the writing is bland or boring and has no distinct voice, then I'm out. And how long do you need to know that? I mean, we when we think about a distinct voice in writing, we like to think that it's omnipresent, right? That it's there in every sentence for every word, but it isn't, right? There are plenty of voice of authors with distinctive voices who that voice goes silent as they're just sort of, as a friend of mine used to say, moving furniture around in the narrative, where they don't think they need to bring their voice to bear. That reading guy says, my first read is usually a contentious process where I wrestle with the structure of the book. Usually, a reread is what decides whether or not I really understand it enough to look at it critically. But okay, well, me too. But what determines whether or not you're going to keep contending with it in the first read through, or is there ever a situation in which you don't? I feel the dark. Most books I know whether or not I like in the first dozen pages or so. The recent murder mystery I read was weighing good, bad up to the end before I felt I would read another by that author. Randy Ray says, "LOL. I also read anything that someone recommends that sounds interesting. I have a stack of Steve recommendations in fact." Well, but there you can't go wrong. That reading guy. It took me 300 pages to come to appreciate Thomas Mallory. Mallory's a really good example. He's off-putting to modern readers at first, but he is so much worth it. You would be missing something if you dropped him. But then again, that makes me wonder. Okay, are there readers out there? Are there readers here in the chat? 109 people. Are there readers here in the chat who will say, "Yes, I'd be missing something, but it's I know that, and it's still the decision I would make. I'm okay with missing it because I need that right. I need to be engaged in the book faster than that, even if I'm missing the riches of Araby later on." Are there some people who are okay with that? They made their peace with that. Uh, that reading guy says it took me. Oh, right. D Nautic says I also gave the author I give the author 100 pages to win me over. 100 pages, somewhere around between 50 and 100 pages, seems to be about the average here. Spaminator. I don't used to use a full 20% rule, but then I read Dune. That one takes a while to get going. It changed my strategy. Books like that haunt me when I think about adopting a 20% rule. They haunt me. Or Matt's suggestion earlier in the chat about I, Claudius is another perfect example. Beth Handy says, I also give a book 100 pages to draw me in. Andrew Russell, A Fine Balance is the best example of a book that hit me like a sledgehammer in terms of storytelling, character, and setting. Still my favorite fiction 3 years after reading. But look at A Fine Balance. None of those sledgehammers hit you in the first three chapters. You're not going to say that, are you? I doubt that anybody who I love that book. I would never say that. It's cumulative there. Not as cumulative as Suitable Boy, but it's still very cumulative. If you're not in that book for a bit of a long haul, if you're using some of the metrics we've seen in this chat, you won't get to those sledgehammers. I don't think. Uh, let's see here. Who have we got? Who is weighing in on this? You're all weighing in so wonderfully. These are the kinds of conversations we would have here in this room over wine and calzones. If only we could. If only Star Trek transporters existed. CM Lady says, I admire the people who give 100 pages, but I'm too impatient and grumpy. If I'm annoyed or put off by the writing, I'm not going past page 2. Annoyed by the writing, yes. There's way too many books and way too little time. But what if you're not? What if you're not annoyed or put off? What if the book isn't actively repelling you in any way? Then you give it more than 2 pages, I'm hoping. That reading guy, I read a lot of classics, so usually if it does not work, it's almost certainly my fault. Well, yes and no. Well, with canonical classics, there's often a cultural divide, and a cultural divide can create a kind of time lapse in appreciation. So that's probably right. Kevin J.N. Steve, if you want more subscribers, maybe you should ask Criminali if you could borrow Elvis. I saw that. Wasn't that incredible? But I don't want more subscribers. I don't at all want more subscribers. He's welcome to all of them. I don't want any more subscribers. And it doesn't look like I'm going to get them. It looks like I'm stalled at around 1350. Just it goes down from 1350 right now. I think, if I remember correctly, it's way down from 1350. Sometimes it'll go up to 1350, but never beyond. I think it'll probably stay that way. And it's not me. I am as charming and sexy as ever. I think it's a change in the YouTube algorithm process. I really do. I think I have noticed that the channels that gain subscribers are the ones that are playing ball for YouTube. So clickbaity or explicitly lying titles, great visuals in the thumbnail, great titles, great upload schedule, all the calls to action, all the stuff that if the YouTube algorithm is watching, it will say, this is the kind of product we want to make. And if you don't do that, if you don't do any of those things, it just ignores you. If it just ignores you, your subscriber count will stay the same. I think I have a lot of thinking to do on the subject, and there's almost nothing out there on YouTube that you can use to research it because it is a subject that YouTubers who are deriving an income from their channel and want it to succeed, want it to flourish, they know perfectly well they can't make a video on that subject, so they don't. So it's a gigantic void. Uh, but anyway, Blue Laser Ryan says, "I'm here. Just finished making chicken tacos." Huh, don't make me any food. I had a plate of rice. Uh, let's see here. Monet Doyle's back. Stephanie Meyer should have written more Twilight books. I think you may be one of the only people in this chat who thinks that. N. Paris says, if it's a book a friend recommended to me, I'll usually stick it out to the end. At very least, I want to find out what they recommended it for. That can sometimes be punishment, though, and sometimes the revelation at the end about the friend is not welcome. The Spaminator, sometimes I know pretty early I'll finish a book. For example, I DNF'd Ulysses so hard the book exploded. Well, see, in my case, there's no I can't have a thing like Ulysses out there that I haven't read and studied. There's no way that I can do that. I need to know what it is. But as a general reader, a civilian, as a friend of mine calls it, no, you wouldn't have any reason to do that. Gypsy Rose says, what was the original question? How to choose a book? Not so much how to choose a book as what's happening to you while you are encountering a book. Tumblers are ratcheting in all directions. If it's a book you don't know the author, you don't know the series, it's a brand new virginal find. What's happening in your brain while you're reading it that's determining for you whether or not you like it, or how long you're going to go with it, et cetera, et cetera. I read a bunch of Amazon samples today. I spent an hour doing it. And I knew at the end of every sample exactly those things. I knew whether or not it was well done. I knew whether or not I liked it. I knew whether I wanted to continue with it. I knew what its faults were, what its flaws were. And I was thinking, okay, some of the clarity of that knowledge has to come from my profession, right? I've been doing this for 50 years, that exact thing for 50 years. So some of it, a lot of it won't be a gut level reaction with me. It will be a reaction, but I'll know exactly what it is. And I've known a lot of critics over the years who use that as a means to cut down on their workload. They'll get a book, they'll read, skim the first couple of pages and think, all right, got it. And they'll write a review based on that. I started to think, okay, well, then what is this like for everybody, not just for book critics? What is that process like? How aware are you of what your tumblers are as they're happening? Kevin JN says, if you were not a critic, would you read an author you know you did not like? Could you see yourself reading King, Cormac McCarthy? I don't think so. I don't think I would. Cormac McCarthy and Stephen King are two examples, and they are professionally indispensable if you are a critic. In my opinion, I know plenty of critics who don't read outside of the narrow field that they plow because they can't. They don't have the time. But I'm kind of an ombudsman, and I'm one of the last ones in the critical world. I'm one of the last ones. Once upon a time, every newspaper in every podunk town in America had a general critic, usually a daily critic. You'd just be churning out book reviews, and they read the books. And if you can find some of those older reviews, they stand up. They are really thought provoking. But the critical world has almost no generalists anymore, and the few generalists that it has are the pampered, pillowed pashas of places like the New Yorker, where they get forever to write their piece, and they can slowly ponder. I've got this new book. Wallace Shawn thought I might like it. I shall take it home and ponder it. And maybe in 2 months I'll have something for you. Those are the only generalists left except for me. So I, you know, uh, I have to. I can't avoid those figures, but I know plenty of critics who do. I know. I would say, for instance, the historian Adam Tooze. I would say he's completely indispensable. You have to read him, but someone whose job is to read contemporary fiction, or God forbid, one genre of contemporary fiction, They're not going to read an 800 per work of history. They're not going to do it. Now, how could I say it is? They're not going to do it. Uh, Fit to be Read is here. Yes, there's so many books that have slow first halves because setup, world building, etc., and then deliver phenomenal second halves. Well, I would think in your own science fiction, that's endemic, right? That's a big, big thing. Is that the world building's got to happen somewhere? I I often wonder whether or not we give historians and also science fiction authors a bit of a pass when it comes to that. World building can still be interesting. Those chapters can still hook you if you're doing a good job of it. Ravens fan 1961. I never DNF a book. If I'm not enjoying it, I might set it aside for a long time, but make a point of eventually returning to finish it. Never. Good Lord. J. Scott Phillips. For me, curiosity keeps me reading. It doesn't have to be action necessarily, but a lurking wonder can get me through a lot of chapters. But once curiosity or wonder are gone, so am I. Getting a lot of that feel here is that some of you are very ruthless about a book's performance. I understand it. You have jobs, loved ones, children, hygiene. You go flat unconscious for 12 hours every day. Your reading time is limited. No wonder I'm seeing some ruthlessness here. Andrew Russell, I'm also attracted to the different in books, i.e., when I come across writing techniques and terms of language and prose that are new to me. A girl is a half-formed thing being a good example. So a girl is a half-formed thing kept you reading. Did it make a fan of you? Did you go to her next book because of that? And if you did, and she was using the same unconventional things again, but not any new unconventional things, was that enough? The Spaminator. I'm okay with flawed books if they're interesting. One of my favorite books is the Pilo Family Circus. Not a perfect book by any stretch of imagination, but I adore it. I don't know the Pilo Family Circus. I don't know that book. Don't recognize it at all, unless it's a typo. Let's see here. Where were we? Where are we here? Good Lord. Look at this chat, will you? Ether Channel. Any good books on Jesse James you would recommend? Well, it's not exactly on topic, but there's a screenplay by Gore Vidal, Anything for Billy. There's a book that was done by Larry McMurtry along the same lines. There's a very good nonfiction book, a biography of Jesse James. I don't remember who wrote it. I don't remember who wrote it. And also, what's his name? Right? Did a novel called The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward so-and-so. Is that right? I don't remember the whole name of the title, but I thought it had real talent in it. Let's see here. Fit to be Read. Also, planned series often sacrifice action in book one to set up characters and story, and then the second book benefits. Example, Judas Unchained. Yes, but it can be lazy and also a failure. Example, Judas Unchained. that no author should ever rely on that, right? They shouldn't rely on their first book being boring. Fit to be Read continues. I feel bad when people DNF Three Body Problem and they never get to experience the brilliance of the two superior sequels. So you're in the crowd of people, a large crowd of people who think that the two second books are better than the first one. There. That's interesting. Again, what I wouldn't give to be able to snap my fingers and have all of you here in this room. So we could just talk over wine and calzones. We get a ton of food next door. I could order in a ton of wine. The bean would scream at each one of you, and then we could just talk all night long. Anyway, Andy Curley Books. I was hooked on Dune from the first page. Not sure why this is the standard for waiting to a certain point before DNFing. Well, I think a lot of people think of it in retrospect as that standard because you cannot tell from the first few pages of Dune how epic it's going to be. You can, I think you can definitely tell from the first few pages. I've been thinking about it since it came up earlier in the chat. I think you would definitely tell in the first few pages how good it is, but you can't tell how big it is. I think that's what people are thinking. The Spaminator classics are not above criticism. I agree, unless you're talking about Meg. Long Tall Fran, I don't think it's conscious decision from me. I usually have several on the go and some just don't get finished. Will persevere for longer with recommended books from trusted sources, though, really. So some of your perseverance is external. No difference in the book. Sometimes a book can be not wowing you, and you'll persist a little longer because of external factors, not internal factors, not what you're seeing on the page. That's fascinating. That is fascinating. I wonder how many people that's true for. Extra delight. If a novel reads like a movie script, I return the book. J. Scott Phillips. Another marker for me is writing style. For instance, I can read anything by Kipling, just going on the mood he sets, his characters, and his engaging prose. Agreed completely. Although let's point out, first of all, you're completely canceled for liking Kipling. Needless to say, you'll never TikTok in this town again. But second, uh, as two Kipling fans, let's point out he never makes you wait. You're sure that you are in the presence of a slam bang, once in a generation storyteller right from the beginning of literally everything he writes. So, so there's that as well. Orthia NZ 13.9K at the moment. Yeah, but it's never going to go more than that. It goes to 13.9 and then it wavers back and then it wavers forward, then it wavers back, then it wavers forward. That's been true. That's been true for 6 or 7 months. I think the algorithm has changed. I don't think my channel is ever going to reach 14K. Certainly never going to reach any higher than that. It'll stop there. I don't play YouTube's game. I never make calls to action to any of you people. I I uh, I never have any arrows, animated arrows pointing to the subscribe button. I don't tell you to do anything. I don't have clickbaity titles. I don't have custom made thumbnails. I don't do anything like that. I don't do anything like that. And also, I don't know how much attention YouTube's algorithm pays to the specific details, but I also don't Jack Edwards up the place. I'm not loving everything that I see. I'm plenty critical of plenty of stuff. I think if a human ever looked at it, they're saying definitely not. This guy is pure public access. We're not going to boost him at all. But I don't think humans do it. I think it's the algorithm, but I think the algorithm is just as good at that as humans are. And I think it takes one look, so to speak, at my channel and says, no way, no way. Uh, Anyway, Danielle, the Bluegrass Reader, I very rarely DNF a book. Sometimes I'll set them aside for a while if something else catches my attention. I can get distracted by everything I want to read. Alex Hardy, come on, y'all, get Steve another point one so we can get a Q&A. I don't think it's going to happen. Aren't you satisfied with Steve streams? Granted, I didn't make one last night because it was 20 below zero, but I'm making one tonight, aren't I? And I have to point out, I don't know why, I don't know what's going on here, but this is the most attended Steve stream that I've ever had. We've been over 100 for the whole time, and we were at 50 in a few seconds. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know how to explain that. Somebody emailed me and asked me, do you want me to help you monitor? Do you want me to be a DM, a mod on your live streams? And that's unthinkable to me. I want to talk to you all. This is as close as we're ever going to get to my dream of having all of you here in this room. I can invite one person at a time, but having a whole group of people, oh, I miss that so much. That's what my Fridays used to be like. Ain't finna read that says, I still finish a trash book if I want to read it. I usually naturally stop at 200 pages if it wasn't feeling it. Now I make up my mind before I start. Andy Curly Book says 100% agree with the novel as movie script comment. It's obvious almost immediately when a book is written this way, and it's a no-go. It's pretty annoying. It's pretty annoying, especially when I'm reading a book like that, and I know already that half my critical brethren in major mainstream publications are going to praise it for the solemnity and awesome intelligence of its prose. And I'm reading and thinking, this book is a consolation prize. The writer did not get the screenplay option. And why can't you see that? But anyway, Extra Delight is responding to Gypsy Rose says, we're commenting on the faith of reading samples Amazon gives customers. Well, the process of reading it. I read an hour of them today, and I was left with the question that applies to all of you. You all ardent readers, same as I am. What is going on in your mind as you are reading pages of a new book? That I think would apply even if you only picked the book because it was recommended or on a subject that you like. It's still new territory for you. What tumblers are changing? What is going on in your mind while you're doing that? Jenny Park says, how is Condi doing lately? Condi is a delight. Those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Condi is my $15 rice cooker. And it's a delight. And I am getting better and better at it. I made a tentative stab at steaming broccoli over my rice the other day, and it worked fine. Worked really fine. I think if I stick to foods that won't kill me if I don't do it wrong, I should be fine for a while. I'm no great master in the kitchen. Let's see here. There's a user whose name I cannot read, has a bunch of comments. So I don't know how to say the name that you have here. And I don't know why you have a name that can't be read. really, for public consumption. I don't know why you would. Personally, I regret reading as much YA as I did. I think a lot of people in 2023 regret that. Wasn't a lot, but more than I realized. Spent a long time, a lot more than I wanted. Yeah, a lot of people fell into that bandwagon. Adults proudly saying on YouTube and off YouTube that they only read books written for children. They don't read anything else. All the rest of it's boring. I don't want it at all. I mocked it at the time. I still mock it. I don't deserve any sympathy. Everybody knew, well, you deserve sympathy, but the people who went overboard on it as a matter of pride and wanted those things in freshman English courses in college deserve nothing but mockery. And I'm glad that a lot of them are feeling how much reading time they wasted. Um, CM Lady says, "What is the point of finishing a book if you're not enjoying it? Unless you're writing a review, I don't see the reason to force myself to read something that's not giving me any pleasure." Agreed. That reading guy, Steve, who is 28 years old, has been reading critically for over 50 years. Math is hard. Well, that reading guy, I agree with you completely. Math is difficult. It's tricky. It's best not to think about it. Okay. Trish Boble, my daughter's little dog, a miniature pincer named Rocky, is snuggled up next to me. I'm in heaven. Oh, kindly give Rocky a face smooch from his king, if you would. That would be great. Zach, Steve, working through the Western Canon starter kit, reading a lot of Dunn now. Do you think there's that a book's overall usefulness is a metric it should be judged by its influence on other books? Should never judge it by its influence on other books. That's not the work of the author. You should judge it by the work of the author. So uh, overall usefulness, books aren't useful at all, except as fuel. If you need to build a fire, they're not useful in any way. So no, it'd be entertainment. It would be my answer. Jenny Parks responding to that reading guy. It's because Steve is immortal and fueled by the tears of the author. Not all of them. Not all of them. Also, sometimes I can give a book pretty rough handling. I've done that, I think, twice so far in 2023. uh, CM Lady I read so many books and film reviews where I'm not convinced the writer read or saw the title they're reviewing. I could tell you tales that would set thy several hairs on end like hairs upon the fretful porpentine. they, yes, yes. Movie reviewers, yes. Movie dude reviewers, yes. Also book reviewers, yes. I think it. I like to think it's pretty obvious in a review. Like you say, I think it's you become convinced pretty quickly that this person doesn't actually know what they're talking about. Ain't finna read that says I usually read fresh books like I know more about writing than the author, so that hasn't really working. Don't really know how to read yet. Maybe following hyped books isn't helping. Not sure that I followed that. Tracy Gruggett says if I'm not like a book yet, say 10 pages or 20, and it isn't clicking within me, but was recommended by a reliable recommender, then I will stick with it. So once again, we have the appearance of an external motivation. So the book isn't clicking with you at all, but you'll stick with it because of something outside of yourself, outside of your relationship with the book. That's interesting. I wonder how many people that's true for. Monet Doyle says, I read a lot of romance. Yes. Yes. Blue Laser Ryan, I know a book is good when I don't sub vocalize when reading it. Oh, really? So I'm assuming, like most people, the sub vocalization with you is a habit. And it goes away when you're so clicking with a book that it somehow isn't necessary anymore. That's fascinating. Gypsy Rose says, if it's a what? Oh, goodness gracious. Here, let's get back to where you were. No reason to miss that. Although, look at all these comments 120 people. How is that possible? Let's go back to Gypsy Rose says, uh, all the way up here. Good Lord. Look at all these comments. How is this even possible? How is it even possible? If it's a recommendation from a person I trust, I won't read samples. I only read samples when comparing versions of translations or if I suspect the book is bad to confirm my suspicions. Edmund Carter says, Steve, wine calzone for 120 some people or more would be interesting. Well, I say all of you, but what I mean is that I would pick the 10 least smelly of you. And with the 10 people is about all this room can take. We've had 10 people here before, many times, and it works. Runs up a bill, but it works, and it's worth it. Very much worth it. D. Nodic, my reading time is much more limited than I would like. DNFing is a necessity. I would think that would be true of everybody except me, then, or me and other maybe a retired person like Greg and another bibliophile reads probably has a lot of time at his disposal. But otherwise, I would think that most people would have to be pretty ruthless. Yuri Not Ure says, Steve, the YouTube algorithm is simple and fair. If you show less of Frida, you don't grow in subscribers. Remember those videos with Frida's face in the opening scene? You were growing fast then. Well, it could be. That could be. I don't know one way or another. When Frida wants to be in the videos, she's in the videos. And those or earlier videos, my Daily Penguins, she was in every one of those videos for the first few seconds because she was young and she was very curious to know what I was doing. She's familiar with what I'm doing now, so she's not always that interested. Uh, Randy Ray says, I didn't even DNF those Star Trek Phoenix novels. Almost always finish stuff, even though I'll occasionally set a book down for a little while. Not sure that's a crack at the price of the Phoenix. Oh. Geo Craftsman, recently, a book I read had a gripping first 60 pages, then the rest was a slow slide into apathy and resentment. But because of those first pages, I wouldn't dare DNF it. Because you were thinking if the author could do it once, he could do it again? Is that why? Is that why you wouldn't dare to do it? Alex Hardy says, if an author is highly enough regarded or cast enough of a shadow on history, I'll give them more than one chance. Best example is Le Guin. Earthsea was boring. Then Left Hand of Darkness, amazed. Yes. Yes, agree on both counts. Alex Hardy, an exception to this would be McCarthy. I read Blood Meridian and would rather have gone into debt buying an Orange Square by Mark Rothko, who is basically McCarthy in visual form. I agree completely. They are both frauds who have managed to bamboozle the whole world because their stuff is easy. Randy, and because of men, because of sexism. Women, if the art world had its way, women would not be legally allowed to look at a Mark Rothko, much less talk about it our own one. But anyway, we started on that. Randy Ray, anything for Billy is a lovely novel. Agree. Aaron says hi. Andrew Russell, in answer to your question regarding Amor McBride, you were spot on, Steve. Her debut blew me away, but I found her writing didn't work on me nearly as well in her second book, The Lesser Bohemian. We'll see. I'm not in your position. Your earlier comment was saying I need innovation as that kind of a hammer and piton to keep me climbing. And that's a vicious cycle. That's a vicious process because every author has to keep reinventing new stuff. That's a large burden to place on an author. Pynchon doesn't do that. And if you're like that, then you will love A Girl Is a Half-Formed Thing, but you won't. You the same That's why I asked the question, because the same innovations that are in the first book are in the next one, but no different innovations. So that wouldn't work for you, and that's a shame because The Lesser Bohemians is terrific. It's in almost every way better than the first book. And how will you know that if you need the constant innovation? Uh, Monet Doyle says, I'm a huge mood reader. I think you share that in common with a lot of people, even in this chat. I'm not a mood reader at all, so I don't really know how that works. Reading by the river, I often rate what I'm reading by how long I read past my bedtime. Yes, a sacred measure for all of you people that are so enamored of being unconscious for 12 hours a day. I know that people will say, well, if this book is making me read past my bedtime, it must be good. And I understand. Blue Laser Ryan, Lonesome Crown, and Ashes of Man didn't make it into your top fantasy of 2022. Did you have a chance to read them? I didn't read anything called Lonesome Crown. Ashes of Man, no, I read Ashes of Man. If I remember correctly, I read that, but it didn't make it into the list. Gypsy Rose says, external influence are a major influence on my reading. How interesting. I'm assuming you mean only one external influence. Me. Kevin J.N., your Fellowship of the Ring video today seems to make your points. You talked of slow movement, which was masterful. I wish you were my teacher in high school when we were assigned The Hobbit. There's another Lord of the Rings video today, I'm afraid. I started the Stevestream before I uploaded my day's videos. There's a whole barrage of videos coming, as if this isn't enough for you. I'm afraid to try to upload them while I'm doing a Stevestream. I'm worried that I would be booted out of my own live stream. A view from the bar is back. I'm sold if after 3 or 4 pages, I know I'll enjoy the author's company, their voice, even if they lose their grip on the story. So just the storytelling, spoken like a writer, just the storytelling is enough, even if the story itself falls apart. Evil Joshua says, Steve, when reading for pleasure, do you factor in blurbs or descriptions on the back of the book? Can a good book Good or bad blurb get you to second guess your first impression? No, I don't factor them in. I don't pay any attention to them. I know the people who wrote them. I write them. So no, no, that is the one thing that doesn't work on me at all. Not at all. I Those people are in my world. They're in my profession. I don't think about them at all. Uh, and if the book is loved by one of my fellow critics whose opinion I respect, I'll know about it before the blurb. I'll have read the piece in draft, so I won't. I'll already know their positive opinion. I won't have to wait for a blurb on a book. The Spaminator, not a typo. The Pilo Family Circus is a dark fantasy comedy about a guy who gets shanghaied to perform as a clown in a circus that sits adjacent to hell. Blood soaked hilarity ensues. Okay, did not know it. Uh, Not that it matters anyway, because you're resoundingly canceled. You will never do TikTok in this town again because you used Shanghai for kidnapping. So you're an evil racist, and you were part of I don't know, the Armenian genocide. I don't know. I don't know what the foremost crime is now, but simply using that word that everybody uses and nobody even thinks of now has made you canceled. Sorry to break that to you. Omnipotent Puma. Most of my reading is forming a view on something already established. So whilst the first 100 pages are a good guide, I'll always see it through. Rarely read new fiction as quality is too varied. Yeah, that's a nice diplomatic way of putting things, isn't it? Monet Doyle. Teachers in schools I went to picked books for me to read, which I hated. The books were never good. Well, I'm against that kind of mandatory reading. There's got to be a better way to do it. I think it turns off more readers than it makes readers. Hannah's Books is here. Good Lord. I know you will be past this conversation by the time you get to this comment, but I too am more willing to stick with books that come highly recommended from readers I respect. Thanks, Steve. Oh, okay, more willing. But some of the people earlier in the chat were saying that it was determinative. It isn't determinative for you, right? You could know that a book you're contemplating was hated by everybody that whose opinions you respect. If you wanted to read it, you would still do it, right? The people early in the chat were saying that determines it for me. Orthia NZ says it's going to happen. I bet I know what you're referring to. 125 people watching or not, I bet you're referring to 14K, and you're wrong. You're wrong. It's not going to happen. J. Scott Phillips says, speaking of thumbnails, your thumbnail for this Steve stream explains why you've been so cold lately. Zero body fat. It's a cross I have to bear. Oh, James Rucala says, just read Mort d'Arthur on Steve's recommendation. Took 100 pages to be able to read Mallory's style. Another chunk was a slog, but the last half was great. Yes, Mallory's already come up in this chat as a perfect example of what you lose if you decide, if the tumblers in your initial reading experience bounce you out of a book in 20 pages, 50 pages, even 100 pages. Le Mort d'Arthur is a perfect example. I, Claudius, was another perfect example that came up where you simply lose that pleasure if you use that yardstick. I'm not saying you shouldn't use that yardstick. I'm saying there's a penalty. There's a cost to doing it. Matt Sheridan, howdy, Steve, and everyone in the chat. Happy Sunday. It's just Steve. Okay? Howdy, Steve. Not everyone in the chat. They're all losers. It's just me. Okay? Matty Boy, who lives nearby and won't visit. Carolyn Nixon, I'm old and realize my remaining reading time is not infinite. From the first page, I look for a reason to DNF, so I'm ruthless to the extreme. So you're looking for reasons. Wow, that's pretty rough. That is pretty rough. Understandable, but rough. Aaron, DNF Gideon the Ninth. My typical reason for giving up on a book is voice. Yeah, I don't give up on books, but voice is a quality that hasn't come up yet because most people couldn't even identify it. It's the last thing in the world that most people think of when they think of writing, and it's the last thing in the world that writers learn how to do. It's the hardest thing for writers to learn how to do. Michael Lombardo says, hello, Steve. Nothing to add discussion wise. Just look at all these people. Michael, I agree. Something is different with this Steve stream than even the last two. This is twice the number. And there were 50 people here in a few seconds. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just good timing, a Sunday night. Maybe that's the case. N. Paris says, I feel like deciding to buy is a very different process than deciding to put a book down. If I'm standing in a bookstore and debating spending $20, there's a lot less room to wow me. Yeah, well, retail bookstores, of course, you all know I have almost no reason to shop for books in a retail bookstore. I get books from publishers, so I don't need to worry about it. That doesn't mean I don't think about it because I saw it firsthand when I worked in a retail bookstore. They're incredibly expensive. It kills me, absolutely kills me. My bookstore, Barnes and Noble in Boston, used to occasionally have corporately sanctioned buy one get one free, buy two get one free sales. All the books had to be put on the table. There was a sign on the table. I lost track of how many customers would tell me, I don't like any of the books that I'm looking at on this table, but I'm going to buy two and get the third one free because that stretches my dollar the most. Uh, anyway, Andrew Russell, sometimes my reading enjoyment is determined by my state of mind. If I'm down or my mind is preoccupied, the author will have to work harder to get the tumblers to fall into place. You see, that's fascinating. I myself am never down because I draw my energy psychic vampire style from all of you. So you're having a fine day, and all of a sudden you're feeling a little down in the dumps. Steve has that energy. He is taking it from you, and it's not that he's not grateful. Randy Ray, do you have Roger Ebert's book, The Pot and How to Use It? It's all about cooking with a rice cooker. No, I have one rice cooker book, and I've never used it. I've never even looked at it. Matt Sheridan, I remember the sense of joy that Mason and Dixon gave me when I began reading it a few months back. Rev Cherrycoke made me laugh very hard. Yeah, Mason and Dixon, I didn't know what to make of like the first 50 pages. The rubric that the yardstick is being used here would have cost me that book. First 50 pages or so, I had no idea what I was doing. And then I started to get the humor of the thing, which is unbelievably, devastatingly dark. And then I just loved it. I couldn't put it down after that. And yet I don't have a physical copy of it. I don't have the original physical copy that I read and marked the hell out of, and I don't have anything else. There was an attractive paperback. I don't have that. Don't have it at all. Uh, some bunny. I want to know what's going on in the minds of people who love Colleen Hoover's books. Yes. Yeah. Although we shouldn't talk about Jack Edwards, right? Behind his back, while he's traveling. Anyway, Gypsy Rose says, I'm trying to educate myself, so I'm not randomly reading new books at the moment. I'm reading books from the Western canon and books from Will Durant's 100 books for an education, plus some. Jeff Messerman is here. Good Lord, my producer at CPL Radio's Book of the Day. We're going to go right back into the trenches of having tons of fun and entertaining all of you tomorrow. Uh, Speaking of choosing a book, check your inbox. Book of the Day selections for the week await. I'll check my inbox when I'm good and ready. And just you keep in mind, your employment hangs by a thread. Okay? You should count your blessings that you're even allowed to email me. Cheryl Olsenbig, no idea what any of that means. J. Scott Phillips, I used to have a 3-book tolerance. Read any 3 books by a given popular author and you mostly get it. Unless they are very good or a favorite author, you kind of get it and can forego reading more. As a civilian, as a friend Tony put it, as a civilian, yes. Yeah. Not in my profession. Like, for instance, well, aspects of my profession. Like, for instance, the vast majority of my fellow semi-regular, regular, or even professional critics review fiction. And if you're reviewing fiction, you have to read everything that the author writes, no matter what. You have to read everything they wrote in the past. You have to know what you're talking about. Or the other critics who review only that stuff just the same as you will have their knives out for you. But somebody who's not a critic, yes, that's the sort of dividing line in this whole conversation. I'm on one side of it, and all the rest of you are on the other. A lot of the metrics that I'm talking about for those tumblers don't apply to me, or mine don't apply to you. Uh, Rhonda Cooper. Oh God, Rhonda Cooper, where did you go? Help me, Rhonda. Where did you go? You disappeared. I'm going to find you. There you are. As a mood reader, I hope the book I'm reading pulls me in where I don't want to put it down when it's time to go to bed. Mornings come too early during the week. Do you have one of these job things that I've heard all about? They sound absolutely ghastly. J. Scott Phillips. Sometimes the influence is external. For instance, I wasn't going to read A Distant Mirror. Then I was admonished, and now I can't put the damn thing down. I've got that from so many people, and it's so incredible to read. People saying, I never thought to read this kind of a book. and I am loving it. And I'm not just plenty of people telling me I'm not loving it on a grading scale. I'm loving it the way I love any other kind of book, and it's work of history. A couple of people have even quoted my favorite line in all of existence. You were right. When it comes to recommending books, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm better at it than anyone alive. I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear it. Jonatron, Steve, I only stick with a book if I know you like it. Very good. Very good. Beth Hendy, off topic. Missing Manatee Mondays. Are there going to be more episodes? Do you have any idea how hard it is to get Deb to do anything? She lays in bed and reads all day with her little dog. Do you know how hard it is to do? It's incredibly hard to do. She would have to set up a camera, put on clothes, and sit up. That's practically running the New York City Marathon. I am working on her. There's only so much I can do. I would love to give you people what you want. You want her more than you want anything. I'm working on it. It's not likely to happen. She's extremely hard to motivate. Let's just put it that way. But I have a large array of other guest stars that I'm thinking about. Zach from the Brattle is perfectly happy to come on regularly. And I'd like to do more booktube talks too. I'd like to talk to more booktubers. So that'll happen. But Deb, believe me, I would love it. We'll see. We'll see. Uh, let's see here. Trip. I follow a few writers slash critics who pick the books they all agree are good. Then I know I'm going to like, but sometimes it takes 100 plus pages to really get into the book. And you have to be careful too, because a lot of critics are prone to bandwagon jumping. In which case, you'll be getting sold a bill of goods. Uh, I might mention Carl Ove Nosgard here, but there are other names I can mention. J. Stock Phillips. Oh, yes. I agree with the sub vocalizing. I often have to read slowly to get into a book, but once it captures me, the sub vocalization disappears, which is, that's great to hear. And I often want to mention that to people who say, I can't possibly read without doing that. It's too ingrained to have it. I want to tell them, no, you do. You not only can do it, you do it. You just don't realize it. That's all. It's under your control. It's just a muscle. Danielle Bluegrass Reader says, yes, more Manatee Mondays, please. I would like that. But if Deb were here in the chat, you could yell at her yourself. It's hard to get her motivated to do something, and much less do it consistently. That reading guy, off topic, but when can we expect the next Bro Watch video? I need my fix of dude bro bashing. Yes. Yes. I know I say this about all kinds of features on this channel. I say I want to do them in this year. I definitely do. But Bro Watch is one of those. I very much want to do that. I also absolutely don't want to miss tomorrow, last week in BookTube. I don't want to stop doing that. I want to keep doing that and a whole bunch of other things. But I have a target in mind, but some of my targets seem really jinxed. I was strongly contemplating a Bro Watch video on somebody, and he deleted his channel. Must have sensed it coming. He deleted his channel. I was strongly considering a Bro Watch video on Andrew Tate. Look what happened to him. So I'll find a target, and we will have a lot of fun. J. Scott Phillips, I think YouTube's algorithm still includes Frida. Otherwise, their stock slips. Well, my baby, I don't tell her what to do. I've never told her what to do. She's either in the video or she's not. She goes where she wants to be. It's always near me. She doesn't like to be more than a few feet away from me at any time for any reason. But her being right next to me so I can hold up her face before every video like I did in the Daily Penguin, those days are gone. She's not that kind of an attention hungry puppy anymore. She knows I'm not going anywhere. So she doesn't have to, she's stretching because she knows I'm talking about her. Let's see here. Jenny Parks. I'm getting worried now. The Road is on my TBR for this month. I need to read it. No, you don't. Probably put the audiobook on to get through it faster. You don't have to get through it at all. Instead of reading The Road, simply go to YouTube and type in Steve Donahue, The Road. You'll get 4 videos where I go through it chapter by chapter, page by page, howling stupidity after howling stupidity. Those are very entertaining videos. You'll laugh out loud many times. And they're all you need to know about the novel. So just do that. Just do that instead. And there are links from one to the other so you won't miss any of them. Shaq Book says, enjoying Barbara Tuchman so far, finishing 3rd chapter now. Are her other books a recommend? They can be uneven, and her later books show decided gaps in the strength of her preparation. I know that she was sharp as a tack and in full possession of her faculties when she wrote, for instance, the first salute, but it has major problems. As a book on its subject, it has major problems. But a lot of the earlier books are fantastic. I mean, you've heard of the Guns of August, but the Proud Tower is incredible, just incredible. Uh, Francisco Leal Gonzalez says, "Greeting, Steve. I got a question, if I may. What's the difference between the picture of Dorian Gray and the uncensored picture of Dorian Gray?" Not much. Bare trivialities. In any introduction to the picture of Dorian Gray, you will be filled in what you're missing. If you haven't already access to the uncensored, it's not a big deal. Either way, you're not missing anything with the standard edition. Matt Sheridan, why do people hold Judge Holden up as if he's some sort of deep, fascinating character? Isn't he like most of McCarthy's villains? Yeah, there are no deep, fascinating characters anywhere in Cormac McCarthy. And the dude bros who hold up any of those characters simply need to get out more. That's all. Uh, Dream in the Garden. Hi, Steve. I started reading A Distant Mirror today. Enjoying it so far. Looking forward to the book club. Yes. Well, I did a video about A Distant Mirror, kind of my first, quote unquote official video for the first part. But I'm not. It's all done. All my videos for today are done, and they're all. I can't upload them while I'm doing the Stevestream because I'm worried that something will go wrong, horribly wrong. There'll be some sort of tech apocalypse again. So once you're done with the Stevestream, you're also going to get a ton of Steve videos, and they're all fascinating and alluringly sexy. So you have that to look forward to. Uh, let's see here. Oh, the Spaminator. I was canceled a long time ago, and TikTok is for the gays. Well, that's not a slight, is it? Although you're spelling TikTok wrong, Gramps. Jeez, old people, I swear. Aaron, funny you should say voice is the last thing a writer learns. I sent you an essay that I wrote about voice in fiction. Look forward to your reaction. Let's not presume, Aaron, right? Let's not presume. I'm assuming it's presumption and not passive aggressive manipulation. You might be looking forward to my reaction, but that presupposes that you'll get one. If I reacted in detail, as I'm sure you want, you don't just want a thumbs up emoji, you want a detailed reaction. If I reacted in detail to everything that everybody sends me, I would never get anything done. So, I mean, I may not read what if you sent me an essay of something of some kind, I may not read it, and if I read it, my reaction certainly will not be in depth in the way that you want. This is one of the only problems. I love how many people email me and send me things, but one of the only problems is an unrealistic expectation that I sometimes am probably guilty of fostering. And in terms of just this, I sent you an essay. I look forward to your reaction. Implies all I have to do is wait, and I'll get that reaction, and that's not necessarily true. If it's a we'll see. We'll see. But nevertheless, voice is the hardest thing for a writer to learn. It's the most evanescent thing. They can't grasp it. No one can teach it. And it's tempting to say you either have it or you don't, because I've sometimes seems like that's true. But I know that it's not. You can come to your voice, like Michelangelo would say, there's a figure trapped in the block. And I can't see it, but I'll know when I hit its contours. I'll know when it's there. I like to believe that's true for any writer. They can eventually discover their voice. Every once in a great while, I've encountered a writer who, for whom voice is the first thing they know how to do. Incredibly enviable. Actually, my friend Deb is a perfect example. She had voice before she had anything else, and she doesn't write at all. It's totally going to waste up there in the fir forests of Maine. Michael Lombardo, after midnight pumpkinization, do you still utilize e-reader, blue light, or strict old school paper and ink? Only the Kindle. Only. It is just so easy. It can take an all night reading session at a walk, and it's so much more comfortable. So in every way, it's just so much more comfortable. And this little thing here, the new basic Kindle, it is as light as a feather. The power button is on the bottom, right where you rest it on your hand, and it's so light that I can rest it on my hand without turning the power button. Lasts all night easily, barely ever needs recharging, and there's no fumbling. There's no what if I need to get excuse me, what if I need to get up? Where do I put it? There's no where's my bookmark? There's no let me get a pencil or anything. There's nothing like that. No, it's hands down, hands down. Uh, J. Scott Phillips. One on one another hand, on the other hand, Sometimes I will consider DNFing a book that isn't engaging me, but I'm more than halfway through, I'm invested and then can't stop. I know a lot of people like that. They simply cannot stop a book they've started. They cannot do it, even if they hate it. And then I'm often surprised by how it can turn around. Well, those are the things that haunt me. They haunted me even before it was kind of a professional obligation. I sort of keep an eye on the Republic of Letters now, so I don't DNF books. But uh, even when that wasn't true, when I was a civilian myself, I always worried that it would turn around and I wouldn't know. I would never know. How many books have I seen where the last 30 pages change everything? The Spaminator. Oh, you're not getting away from me, Spaminator. I didn't go to all the bother of getting a supervillain only to have you escape. There we go. The title of the stream has something to do with the number of people here, I think, about reading. How in this circle wouldn't tune in. Maybe that's the number. Who knows? Actually, that's a very good thought. I will experiment on that. I will see. I will give the next Steve stream a title that has nothing to do with reading, and we'll see if that's part of the reason. Wouldn't that be interesting? I swear, I have so much to learn about this. Like, for instance, Steve streaming during the day, which I never do. Would the numbers be higher then, lower then? I no idea. No idea. Still a lot to learn. Monet Doyle, I think it's unfair that only certain people get ARCs of books that aren't out yet. That person talks about the book before anyone has read it. Well, it's not unfair. It's not unfair. It takes an amount of effort. It takes an amount of institutional outlay to create those things. They have no commercial value. They don't have a price on them. And it also takes an effort to organize the mailing and sending of them. So it's not unfair because the recipients are able to pay for that, not in terms of money, but in terms of why you would make such a thing. You would make such a thing and go to that outlay and that expense in order to generate talk and conversation for your book, in order to generate sales down the line for your book. That's what your hope is. Uh, and well, uh, the diplomatic way to put this would be that not everyone is on equal footing when it comes to being able to generate conversation or sales about a book. Ordinary people can. They can maybe, first of all, they're not going to get to it. And second, when they get around to it 2 years down the line, the most they'll be able to do is influence maybe one person, maybe two people to read it. The number of people who can do much more than that is much, much smaller. And they're the ones who get ARCs. That's not unfair at all. Uh, it's tit for tat. It's the publishers are sending the books exactly where they will do the most good. Sending an ARC to a normal person who's A, not going to read it for a year, and B, only going to be able to influence maybe two or three people to read it, that doesn't make any sense from a business point of view. Whereas a publisher who said I'm small fry when I'm not very well known by name in the book world, but I have a large influence. I have a large audience that I've built up over many years. It's a roughly 350, 375,000 readers that will follow what I write wherever that writing is. They years and years ago realized here is somebody whose writing about books really entertains me and whose recommendations have not failed me. I'm going to latch onto this person. I'm going to follow them wherever they go. If such a person is out there and you know about them, they are worth your while to send an ARC to. Nothing unfair about that at all. Uh, but anyway, Francisco says, "Hi Steve. Another question: would Jeff and yourself accept requests for books of the day on CPL Radio?" No, no, we would not. I appreciate it. We appreciate the viewership, but no, no. Uh, we'll decide. We'll decide on our own. Mostly, it'll be me who's deciding what do we do on our own. Matt Sheridan says, "I agree about Mason and Dixon. At the beginning, I could not make out what it was about, but I couldn't stop reading, and the prose just made me smile. Yes." And then after a while, you realize what it's about, how devastatingly subversive it is, and then you're hooked anyway. Just just unbelievable. I just unbelievable. To the point where there are Pitchonian excesses in it. There are classic Pitchonian bits in it. The giant wheel of cheese, for instance, or the missing span of 3 weeks or whatever. That that get discourses of their own. They get long imaginative discourses of their own. And I'm watching him. I'm reading the book, and I'm watching him embark on one of those things, and I'm saying, okay, So this is going to be a Pig Bodine digression of a kind from Gravity's Rainbow, where it doesn't affect the book at all. It's just you feel like doing this. And ordinarily, I have a short amount of attention for those, a short amount of patience. But in Mason Dixon, I would see one starting. I would know just what it is. All right, you're about to do a shtick, and I would love it anyway. Just absolutely love it anyway. Uh, Omnipotent Poobah. A good example is Girl Woman Other. If it wasn't so acclaimed, I would have DNF'd pretty quickly. Ground molars and plodded on. A mistake in retrospect. Good idea, but the author can't write. I appreciate the sentiment. I am not allowed to agree with you, or I will be canceled. So you are not allowed to dislike that book. If you're in the critical world, you're not allowed to dislike it. Rhonda Cooper. I'm a fourth grade teacher. Oh my God. Round of applause. Round of the baby bee. Rhonda is a fourth grade teacher. Round of applause. You are a hero. What do you have to say? Let's hope it's not dumb. I'm a fourth grade teacher. My students leave my classroom avid readers. They groan when it's time to put their books away and do other work. Bet a lot of that has to do with you. I bet a lot of it does. I wonder how many of them will know how much they owe you. Oh, that is so incredible. See, and that's why you have your job and I don't. Because if I had your job, I wouldn't make them do other work. If they groaned when I made them stop reading, I would let them read all day long. And that couldn't do that. Uh, Gypsy Rose says, Steve, you do give the best recommendations. I work really hard on my recommendation. I take them very seriously. It really, really pleases me when somebody comes back to me and says, "You recommended this book. I read it because of your recommendation, and I loved it." That really pleases me. Uh, every book I've read based on your comments has been excellent. If I'm not careful, my TBR will be the size of your personal library. Your TBR doesn't need to worry. The point is, the point should be that reach around inside your heart. You will feel a wriggling little worm-like thing. You know what that is? That's your free will. And what you need to do is grab hold of it and give it to me. Just give it to Steve and just say, I not only have all of your recommendations landed for me, but I've decided I won't read anything else except recommendations from Steve for the rest of my life. That's all. I'm surrendering my free will to you. Every book I choose on my own that isn't a Steve recommendation has a good chance of being crappy. So I'm going to let you pick my books from now on. It was a mistake back in the book of Genesis for me to give you people free will in the first place. If you want to give it back, that's fine by me. Andy Curly Book says, love your bro watch vids too. Always make me laugh. Well, if I knew how to make a playlist, and it's not hard to do, I'm sure. And if I did that, a bro watch playlist would exist. There are plenty of videos on my channel that are bro watch videos that aren't called that. I hadn't come up with that title yet. So to satisfy all of you until I make a new one, I will get to work. I will draw some notes together this week to see if maybe there isn't a victim that I can call up. Andy Curly Book says, just downloaded Distant Mirror on my Kindle. I'm willing to try with all these rave reviews. You will not be sorry. It's a 700-page work of medieval history. You might be looking at that and thinking, oh no, might be as good as could be, but it's not for me. But you're wrong. You're wrong. If you think that, you're wrong. Good books are for everybody. And history has been set off in this gated community unfairly. A good history book is just as good as any other thing. Better, I would say. Uh, J. Scott Phillips, I notice you seem to have conquered your streaming fear of scrolling back to comments without getting booted. Yes, I tried it a few times with a heart in the throat and it didn't boot me off. So I'm thinking I might be getting the hang of this. And that's great. Because, not to toot my own horn here. I haven't done that in this stream. I honestly don't know why. Anyway, I know plenty of channels on YouTube that have 150,000, 250,000, 750,000 subscribers. They do a live stream with 2 days of preparation, 2 days where that thing is up, coming soon. And they don't have this many people watching. And they certainly don't have this active a comments field. With literally 100 times my subscribers. They don't come close to this number. So I figured if I don't get comfortable with at least reading every comment, then I shouldn't be doing this. J. Scott Phillips has another comment. Tuckman wrote The First Salute. I read that years ago and loved it. Another I couldn't put down. Well, in terms of reading, in terms of keeping you going, sure, you can't put it down. But some of the history in it is not particular. There are some howlers in it, some fairly big mistakes in it of a factual nature, not an interpretive nature, and certainly not a narrative nature. But if you put Mark Richardson in his office at the library and you handed him a copy, I don't think he's read The First Salute. I don't remember it being in his house. If you slipped a copy of that into his office and sat outside the closed door, it wouldn't be long before you would hear, "Oh, come on," because he knows that subject. So do I. Maybe I'm suffering from that. It, that's the reason, not the can't put it down reason. Andrew Russell says nonfiction for me has a greater hit rate. It's heavily topic dependent, and because I already know the topic before I start reading, I'm more likely to find something appealing. Yes, but you don't need to. All the people in the chat here who are thinking, oh, will I do I need to know about the 14th century? You don't. A good historian will have you well in hand. They will take care of you. Aaron Hook says, "What do you think of the film adaptation of The Road and No Country for Old Men? I tried reading Blood Meridian, found it so frustrating that I threw the book across the room." Uh, I threw Blood Meridian across the room too, and I fantasized that Cormac McCarthy was on the other side of the room, and I was pinging it straight at his face. The movies are terrible, both awful. And of course, the film bros aren't going to say that because the only book they've ever read, aside from the 4 Hour Work Week, are those two books. So they're going to say that the books are brilliant and the films are brilliant too. The books stink and the movies stink. Okay, Javier Bardem's hair notwithstanding. Uh, Zach, are there any volumes of the complete works of any particular author you feel Penguin would concede to publish? Would love to see an expansion of Walter Raleigh. Well, it wouldn't be Walter Raleigh. There are plenty. Black Spying Penguin Classics should do all of Shakespeare, and they don't. That'd be number one for me. Before Gibbon, for Walter Raleigh, certainly before all the Spencer that they do, and they don't do that. That's a conspicuous omission. Penguin Classics, as far as I know, does nothing by Afra Ben. How weird is that? Penguin Classic, Black Spine, Penguin Classics, nothing for Virginia Woolf. There's lots. There's lots that I would add to the Penguin line if I could. Uh, let's see here. Oh goodness, where are we? Where did we stop? There we go. J. Scott Phillips. I'm only a few chapters into A Distant Mirror. When does the tentacle stuff start happening? Can't wait. Oh, I'm sorry to say, it's one of the book's only flaws is that it has no tentacle literature. I think I have a tentacle book coming up this week on the reading docket, and I'm inordinately excited. The Spaminator. Which of Stephen King's novels do you think fans consider his best book or his magnum opus? And could you give it the same treatment you gave The Road? Uh, I think probably the consensus would be The Stand, but the the book from which was drawn the quintessential dude bro movie, The Shawshank Redemption, would also be right up there. I bet it would be The Stand, though. Uh, John Gabriel Borkman. Steve, have you read many modern playwrights, or is your interest in theater primarily the performance? What do you think of plays as a literary reading experience? I tend to like plays as literary experiences, but modern theater, hardly any. Once I stopped going, I stopped caring, and that's bad. That's really bad. But I did. I don't know how to fix that. I'm not going back to theaters. So, Geo Craftsman, I'm well into A Distant Mirror, and it's such a different reading experience than reading a 200-page novel, but it's fantastic. It's like chipping away at a block, but every grain that comes off is fascinating. Well, you know where I stand already, right? A really well done 800-page history is 10 times better than any excuse me, really well done 800-page contemporary novel could possibly be. I especially since when you're done, if you read, God forbid, a new Sally Rooney novel, uh, when you finish with it, no matter what you think of it, whether you like it or don't like it, you can't then go to the library or the bookstore and get uh, uh, Eamon McBride or Joe Mino writing the same plot, writing about the same characters. You can't do that. Whereas if you love A Distant Mirror, you could stay in the 14th century. You could keep reading about it from different viewpoints, different research tactics, different narrative styles. You do that for the rest of your life. The same period, because it really happened. Anyway, Uh, uh, let's see here. Aaron, my favorite review of McCarthy came from James Elroy's Paris Review interviews. Francisco says, me again. Although I don't have a booktube channel, I love when other booktubers tag you. Can I propose a tag? It'd be called the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, books that best represent each. Well, even if somebody made that tag, they wouldn't tag me because I'm an outcast. I'm a leper. I'm a pariah on booktube. Nobody likes me. J. Scott Phillips, I think you're getting so many streaming viewers because you are announcing them ahead of time. A lot of folks were already logged in by the time. But, well, okay, first of all, I've announced it some ahead of time before. It hasn't been like this. And it isn't that a lot of folks were, it's that 50 people were. That's insane. That's insane. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. The Spaminator also loved The Road. First time I read it, but after learning about reading critically from you, I can't reread it without groaning in agony. So thanks for that, you jerk. Well, would you rather be groping along in lymph node induced ignorance, or would you rather be looking? It's not like I took something away, right? This is the point I always try to make with people when they talk about critical reading. I know some people in the course of my life, I know people who said, I don't want to know. I don't want to hear anything about critical reading. I don't want to lose that innocence. I don't want to read that way because they think and say, I'm going to lose something. But it's not like you only lose something, you get something back. You get all the stuff that is only accessible that way is suddenly now accessible to you. Uh, anyway, just refer yourself to my videos on the road. As much as painful as it was for you to lose the book, you'll be entertained by the videos. Jeffrey Clark, Russell Banks recently died. I know. I know. I haven't heard too much about his death, but he lives near me in upstate New York. I would love to see Cloud Splitter made into a movie. Yet Cloud Splitter is so firmly in my mind that I can't help but think that a movie would just it wouldn't be the same. It would done really well. It would be really good. I shouldn't say that because Lord of the Rings was firmly in my mind, and I really liked the Fellowship of the Ring. So yes, Cloud Splitter, a lot of his other books. It's uh, Shack book. What's your preference on Greek versus Roman names for a Greek pantheon? I've read Fagel's Iliad and now reading Pope's translation. I'm not in favor of Roman names, but love Pope's translation. Well, clearly you are not. You have not watched my channel for a long time because when I've talked about these classics, I'm constantly apologizing for automatically slipping into the Roman names. I automatically do, unless I'm making a conscious effort at every turn. I slip into the Roman names. Uh, so I don't know if it's a preference. I don't have a preference either way, but it's definitely training. It's definitely inculcation because if I'm not consciously watching myself, I won't even hesitate. Uh, Tripp says one book I've been using as a guide for my reading is Ford Maddox Ford's The March of Literature. Also, Lafcadio Hearn's lectures on literature have been helpful. I am the only guide you need, not those two fusty old Crontosauruses. Me, I'm the only guide you need. J. Scott Phillips, you just mentioned patience, another earmark. If the author can encourage patience in my reading, I can stay engaged through slower parts, and I'm appreciative. Some authors can do that. I mentioned yesterday that Tolkien is one of them. I think he's one of them, unless he's really straining your patience, really. And we'll get to that in my read along of the Two Towers. Spaminator, I had an English teacher like Rhonda Cooper. Makes a difference. Yes, it does. She's a hero. She's the hero of this chat. They do make a difference, and usually on their own dime. Usually they're paying for all the extra stuff they're bringing to class. And a lot of times paying for stuff for their students as well on a budget that's pretty tight as it is. Uh, Matt Sheridan, the first book recommendation I got from you was Patriots by A.J. Langouth, and it was amazing. In Steve, we trust. Very good. Very good. I like the sound of that. Anti Gaia, I think Raoul Peck is doing a Cloud Spitter miniseries. I don't know who Raoul Peck is, but I would really hope that the miniseries would be good. I have no faith after the Rings of Power, none at all. It's destroyed me completely. Uh, the Spaminator, that English teacher was also smoking hot, so there's that. So you were the Spaminator even then. ASQ. Jenny Parks, I got Killer Angels due to your recommendation. We'll be reading it later this year. Thrift Bookish, I bought an ARC copy of Wolf Hall for 50 cents yesterday at the library. I know how much you praise it, so I had to get it. An ARC for 50 cents at your library sale. Fantastic. Who knows if I'd have found an ARC at my library sale yesterday, but it was canceled because it was 2 degrees Fahrenheit. So they'll have to reschedule. Jenny Parks, Where are you, Jenny? You have Jenny. Who can I turn to? There we go. How do you handle it if someone doesn't like your recommendation? Do you try again or disown straight away? I've almost never had that happen. I remember every time that it does. It I'm not blaming the person, but it sticks with me like nothing. When somebody says, "You strongly recommended this to me individually, and I didn't like it," that sticks with me. And I take it very seriously. I never disown. The only people I disown are the people who say I didn't like it when they did, and they're just telling me because they know they want to put a check in things. They want to say, "You said I'd love this. I didn't." When, yeah, right, you didn't read it, or you did read it and you did like it, and you're lying. But the people who, there've been a handful of people, fewer than five, uh, over the years, over the decades, who have come back to me from an earnest recommendation, said I just didn't like it. Sorry, and they stick with me. They really do. The Spaminator, the film adaptation of No Country for Old Men, is one of my favorite movies. Read the book last, wanted to like it so bad, but alas. Well, if you return to the movie, you'll see how bad it stinks, how stupid and slogany and bumper stickery stupid it is. You will return to it, and that's what you will think. All you have to do is compare it to something that is doing what it's doing well. That's all you have to do. You don't have to take my word for it. Just have to watch it again if you can bear it, and then compare it to watch the next movie you watch should be something trying to do what it does and doing that something well. So watch the movie version of No Country for Old Men, and then watch The Way of the Gun with uh, Brian Philippi and James Caan. There you go. That'll do it just fine. You won't need me. That'll do it just fine. J. Scott Phillips, historical mistakes in the first salute. I will look at it differently from now on. Well, I'm not saying that the narrative energy wasn't good, but that's part of the deal of a historian, right? I'm not saying at all that, like somebody said earlier in the chat, the first mistake I hit, I'm out. I'm not saying that at all. There are mistakes in Prescott, but it makes a difference. To me, the more you know the subject, the more it makes a difference, right? You can the best is when a historian's narrative energy is incredibly great and they aren't making any huge howlers. A howler or two in a long work of history is probably unavoidable, but it's a thinner book. It's a thinner book. Wilson is here. I continue with books based on the number of tentacles within the first few chapters. I've taught you well. Matt Sheridan, James Franco was supposed to do a film adaptation of Blood Meridian, ultimate facepalm. Well, yeah, he once had unlimited cachet in Hollywood, and then he was hashtag Me Too. He was hashtag timed up for being a cad drunk at parties. That's all. Virtually nothing. There are two examples that are worse than that, and the two examples that are worse than that aren't worth canceling a career that was bristling with talent. Don't get me started on that. All of that cachet went away in 5 seconds. One offhand comment by one Oscar contender, and it all went away in 5 seconds. Suddenly, he went from, I want to do Blood Meridian and I've got the money lined up for it, to, I really don't want to go to jail tomorrow. I don't want cops to come to my mansion and bring me to jail. That happened in the course of 10 hours. And now he's had to claw his way back to being in well-received TV shows or anything like that. But anyway, that's a subject for another Stevestream. Michael Lombardo, you mentioned once that thinking about and planning the day's videos is an exciting part of your channel. Any plans for March Mystery Madness or Read Tolkien Day next month? Well, I don't usually go that far ahead. When I mentioned that, I mentioned that when the bean is finally ready to get up, when she's finally ready to get out of bed, which isn't right away. It isn't dawn. I watch dawn come up. I watch the sky turn gray and then pink. She's not ready then, and she's not ready hours after that either. But when she is finally ready to get up, then I swing the legs around, plant the feet on the floor, and that's when I start to think, all right, what have I got to do today? What is today? I've got this writing to do, this writing to do, this editing thing to do. I've got this Zoom call. I've got this video conference with this person. And I've also got my imaginary friends on book 2. What am I going to do for book 2? What do I want to do that day? and ideas come flooding. All kinds of things. Like I've said, I can't. It amazes me that other booktubers can do 2 videos a week. I can't imagine that. Unless I were sick, I can't imagine that. But your examples don't work because they're too far ahead of time. I'm thinking about that day. We keep in mind, in the course of 2 days, I make as many videos as most booktubers make in a week. That's in 2 days. So I'm not thinking about March Mystery Madness. I'm sure I will do a video every day. I'm sure I will. Read Tolkien Day, not so much because it's just one day. I'm going to be I'm doing a chapter of Two Towers every day in February. So, I don't I'm not so much thinking of Read Tolkien Day, but March Mystery Madness. Oh yes, I'm hoping I'll be a host this year, and we'll just talk about it all month like we always do. We'll start off by going through the Decalogue of the rules again. I'll ask you all again, what do you think of the rules? Can you think of any examples that break them? And then we'll go on. I'll talk about a mystery every day or a subject every day. I'm hoping. I love it so much. Orthia NZ, I'm currently reading Ransom Riggs last in the series and I'm enjoying it, but not picking it up as often as I actually finish it. I think it's because it's the last book, but I'm also highly distractible. Francisco, your real-time viewership as of right now is 119 picture, which is just great. I know. I know. I watched a live stream. A friend of mine has a big YouTube channel. He had a live stream yesterday. And I think he maxed out at 61 people. And he advanced warned it. He had an advertisement for it for days on his channel. You couldn't miss it. You could bookmark it. You could hit the notify me tab. Uh, and he has, I think the last time I counted, he had 170,000 subscribers. So he has, a gigantic amount, 100 times more subscribers than I do. And he doesn't have this. I think that's just an engagement of the community. Although J. Scott Phillips also pointed out earlier that it might have to do with the fact that I was topic specific in the title. We shall see. I will test that. Constantino 666. Hi, what do you think about Erickson's Malazan series? People praise it no end, but it didn't do anything for me when I try. What am I missing? Well, I'm not necessarily saying that you're missing anything, but Gardens of the Moon, the first one. If you read that all the way to the end and it did nothing for you, then you are not going to like the series. Because I'm not saying that's the peak. I think the peak comes 4 books later in terms of narrative energy. But all of his tricks are there. He has a limited number of tricks. They're good tricks. He's a smart writer. But if what he does, that's not always true with fantasy series, but if what he does in that first book doesn't work on you, then there's no reason for you to worry about the rest of the series because it's not gonna work on you. Shoemaker says it's because it is the nearest for us to be with you with wine and calzones there too. Yes, yes, it's the nearest I'll come. I want it so bad. For a long time before I did BookTube, I had editors and writers over here every Friday, and it was great, absolutely great with my girls on the couch and Lucy farting up a storm. And COVID ended that, and it hasn't returned. Just hasn't returned. I would love it, absolutely love it, because I'm not an introvert. I actually like that sort of thing. Aaron says, "What did you teach the Spaminator about critical reading? Do you have videos specifically focused on this topic?" Well, not really specifically focused on it. It's sort of been an ongoing theme on this channel for 6 years, which is the difference between just reading as an old friend of mine used to say, like a cow eating grass in a field. You're contentedly mowing along. Uh, that versus assessing what you're reading as you're reading it. Well, you already know what reading critically is. I don't think I've ever done a video explicitly on it, but it comes up all the time. I'm always reassuring people that reading critically isn't losing you anything. It isn't losing you anything. It's gaining you things. Uh, John Gabriel Borkman, what do you think of playwrights like Ibsen, Chekhov, Strindberg, Pirandello, Beckett, Shaw? Well, yeah, okay. So the next 3 hours on each one of them. I saw a mail haul where you pulled out Long Day's Journey to Night when you and love when you talk anything theater. Yes, but they're long conversations. There's no way that I can a list. There's no way that I can do it. Well, I do like talking about theater and especially about movies, but Long Day's Journey to the Night, I can't help but think of as a movie. I saw it first as a play, but I can't help but think of it as that a toweringly great movie. Taylor Brock, would you make a video on how to read a history book when it's something you are unfamiliar with, or make references to people, events, ideas that the book assumes you know? A good history book won't do that. A good history book may get by a good author. A good author may have a reference or term here or there that you have to put a question mark next to and look it up on your own. But a good one won't do that. Not mainly, not in any main way, not in any way that would hurt the narrative. They'll be right with you the whole time. They'll be helping you the whole time. I should point out, I don't I don't mean to be didactic on the subject, but I should point out that an electronic reader will help you because you can press on the term and get a definition from Wikipedia. but even lacking that, uh, I'd be happy to make a video on how to read a history book. I worry that it might seem condescending. A lot of you do that already, but I'm learning from this distant mirror read along that a lot of you don't. A lot of you, I'm getting a pretty clear impression this is the first work of history you've read since school. So maybe so. Daniel Marcos, I recently watched your video on the Canterbury Tales, and today at the Strand, I stumbled on a $3 1977 copy of the Neville Coghill. You were at the Strand. Mm. Oh, I envy that. I don't think I'm ever going to be at the Strand again, and I miss it. It was once a treasured destination. Oh, good for you. Uh, Gypsy Rose, where did you go? Let's find Gypsy Rose. Every once in a while, the chat bounces on me. I'm currently reading Canterbury Tales and finding it difficult, but will persevere. Anti Gaia, Affliction was a decent film too, but it's painful to watch if you've known someone who's an alcoholic. Decent is about as far as I would go with the film of Affliction. Just about as far as I would go. I I I cannot watch that movie without noticing places that could be better. Choices that I would make that would improve it. I think that the star had a great deal of sway with his director, which is always bad. That is always bad. I could be wrong about that. I don't know anything about what happened on set, but anyway. Anyway, Daniel Marcos, is there a book you wish you had a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition? Oh yeah, there are many. Can we hear sirens? Lots of sirens. That's six I count so far. Oh my, whole cacophony of sirens, but they're not passing. They're, they're going in a different direction. How interesting. Anyway, Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. Oh my God, I could go on forever. I could go on forever. Lawrence Ellsworth is a new and excellent translator of the works of Alexander Dumas. His Three Musketeers should be a Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. Good as the one they have is, the cover art for the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of the Three Musketeers is terrible. I would want to replace that, and I would want to replace the translation with his. But a whole bunch of other things. Oh my God, the Mabinogion Quartet by Evangeline Walton ought to be a Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition instead of being out of print. It ought to be a Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, and a whole bunch of other things. A whole bunch. Oh my God. What about non Canterbury Tales Chaucer? You could fill a Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition with all the rest of Chaucer that doesn't exist. I know there's no demographic market for it. That's why it doesn't exist. But I could go on and on and on. The old cartoon Pogo, big Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of a whole bunch of Pogo, would be wonderful. But anyway, J. Scott Phillips, another testament to the involvement of this stream. I'm impressed with the total lack of random tangents happening. This may be how to manage your distant mirror read along. I don't know. There haven't been many tangents, I think, because for once I'm asking people questions about their own direct experience. I mean, a lot of times the Steve streams can be a little bit off-putting by how forbiddingly sexy I am. I try my hardest to affect a common everyman demeanor, but come on, I'm fairly well inaccessible. Whereas here, I'm asking what you all do when you read, which is something that anybody can answer, even Wilson. In case you're wondering, this is kind of what you would get in this room over by the calzones. I wasn't saying that. I was saying it was really fun. I wasn't saying I wouldn't be insufferable. uh, let's see here. Drew's Models is answering Fit to be Read. Fit to be Read hasn't been here in a while. I also DNF Pandora's Star, but it had enough fascination between chapters of utter boredom. Sue's Book Nook is here. I read Anthony Trollope during one of your read-alongs and loved his writing. Yes, I need to do another read-along of an Anthony Trollope. Matt Sheridan, No Country for Old Men is a brilliant film. God bless the Coen brothers. No, No, it's not. No, it's not a brilliant film. It's not even a good film. It is, in fact, a bad film. And the only reason that you get the papal dispensation to say what you're saying is because you have not watched enough film. And specifically, you have not watched any other films that are trying to do the same kinds of things that No Country for Old Men is trying to do. It's trying to do a limited menu of things, and I'd be willing to bet it's the only movie you have ever watched that's trying to do that limited menu of things. So you have no grounds to compare. All you're saying is that you liked it. Well, you're free to like it, but it's not a brilliant film. It's not even a good film. It is, in fact, a bad film. And Aaron chimes in right away with The Way of the Gun. It's fantastic, and it is. It's trying to do virtually everything bit by bit that No Country for Old Men is trying to do, only it does it successfully, really successfully. So there you go. Don't have to turn any further than that. If Aaron agrees with me, I can't be wrong. That reading, guys. Speaking of films, have you decided to integrate film commentary into your book channel? I have. I do want to do it. I just don't know how to do it yet. I haven't figured out. It'll be a recurring feature, but I'm leaning towards just going through Netflix on the iPad. Just to do that rather than take requests or go afield or anything like that. That would keep it book related. Jeffrey Watson, thoughts on the Federalist Papers? These kinds of questions are not chat questions. They don't work. What do you think I'm going to say to an answer like that with a chat flying by and 120 people here? What do you think I'm going to say in answer to a question like that? I like them. What does that help anybody? Do I have thoughts about what the Federalist Papers are talking about? Yes, I do. It's a whole separate Stevestream that would take 10 hours. So I don't I never know how to respond to I've had a few of those here. And I never know how to respond to them. They don't belong in a chat. Definitely. I have lots of thoughts on the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. Lots and lots of thoughts. Anyway, Zach, hi Steve. Do you have a go-to edition of Shakespeare? Penguin Books did publish a very good slipcase hardcover edition of the complete Shakespeare. Good apparatus, has some commentary from Northrop Frye. They never published a Penguin Classic complete Shakespeare. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a big, fat, black spine Penguin Classic paperback complete Shakespeare. They haven't done that, and I don't know why they haven't done it. It mystifies me. I'm hoping that sometime I will live to see it. Right now, my go-to Shakespeare of all time is the second edition of the Riverside, the big brown book with a tapestry on the cover. But the one that I've been going to lately is the Royal Shakespeare Society, that orange one with the flowers on the cover. That's the one I've been going to lately, just because I'm digging through what you call its apparatus. I'm digging through that. I want to get to know it really well, the way I do the apparatus in the Riverside. Spaminator, I've never actually asked you straight out for a recommendation. Let's try it. I'm in a scary mood. My favorite horror novel is The Haunting of Hill House. What would you recommend? Not good for horror. As I've mentioned many times on this channel, it's not a genre that I've extensively read or that I really get. And I would need to know a lot more than just one book. I would need to know a lot more than your favorite. But it's not going to work anyway in this particular genre. Orthia NZ, you mandatory Pride and Prejudice read along all those years ago, sparked an annual read for me. I look forward to June. What happens in June? June on the Range? Is that what you're talking about? Or is there some sort of Jane Austen event in June? Oh, Jane Austen June? No, that's Jane Austen July, isn't it? Well, it doesn't matter. I read Pride and Prejudice at least once a year, so it's all perfectly fine by me. Aaron has disappeared. He should have the strength of his convictions to stick around. Where he is. Glass Onion breaks the rules of mystery writing. Yes, it does. That much is true. It does. A view from the bars here. Oh my God. Have you gotten to the new Winslow book that comes out in April? Do you ever feel his voice verges on the dude bro? Verges on the dude bro. You're just a bit. Yes, it does. It verges just a bit on the dude bro. I haven't got to it yet. No, I don't think I have a physical copy. I have the ebook, but I don't think I got even an advanced copy yet. And I haven't got to the ebook, so I haven't got to it at all yet. But I will certainly when it comes out for the vague, fleeting dude bro references. The Spaminator is responding to Gypsy Rose says, if you're having trouble with the Canterbury Tales, just wait till you get to the fart jokes. It really opens up. A view from the bar. I can already hear your sigh, but I'm reading Hastings' Abyss. Do you think Biden's handling of the Ukraine war is comparable to JFK of the Cuban Missile Crisis? Comparable. I don't know what that means. It's totally apples and oranges. Why? How would it be comparable? Uh, Surely you mean JFK's handling of the Cold War, right? Or no? Uh, they're totally apples and oranges. I don't know. I wouldn't uh, compare them at all. I don't think they're in any way comparable. It's what do you think of Biden's handling of the Ukraine war is comparable to JFK reading the Sunday Funnies? I don't see them as comparable in any way. So I'm not understanding the question. Is what I'm saying. Aaron says Steve salons with writers and editors, wine and calzones sounds like my dream as a writer. My online writing group is a godsend, but in-person conversation would be wonderful. Some of those meetings, I'm sure you would have wanted to be a fly on the wall. It was a room full of professional writers talking craft. I never tire of asking professional writers about their craft. It's easy for me to do because I'm not insecure about my own craft. I know how to write, so it's easy for me to ask people without feeling threatened by their answers. It especially helps if you've got a room full of people who can write better than you can. Then, oh, some of those conversations, I miss them. I do. No offense to Frida, but I miss them. It was a totally different world. It was pre-pandemic. It was pre-Frida. She hadn't been born yet. It was my girls and a room full of people. I would get everything ready ahead of time. I would make sure to order in $200 worth of wine. Make sure that there was ample wine. The last thing you want is to run out of wine in the evening. And then everyone would come one by one and greet the girls, elaborately fawn over Lucy because my basset hound Lucy she wouldn't get up to greet people because she was hugely fat. So she would just lay there next to me. But she noticed every new person that came in, and she would just start screaming this kind of lowing, groaning, grunting, "Woo, woo, woo," unless you went over and patted her elaborately for 10 minutes. So everybody had to do that as they came in. And then once we were all present, we would pass around the menu for the place next door to order food, huge pile of food. Um, and talk books and writing all night long. It was just wonderful. Uh, Sean G says these days you get me too just looking at someone wrong. Got fired from my last job for something similar. Well, it isn't quite so bad as just looking at someone wrong, but it is hyper exaggerated. In a lot of cases, it's hyper exaggerated. It's, that makes it extra bitter because, of course, the ultimate source, the ultimate DNA of hashtag Me Too or hashtag Times Up is a good one. It's a good one. Men should be heightened aware of whether or not they're being rude, caustic, obnoxious, creepy to women all around them. Men should be aware of that. And hashtag Me Too, hashtag Times Up did a lot to heighten that awareness. So I'm thinking of the average guy who's he's not a jerk, he's not a Neanderthal, but he didn't think of that average guy before those movements, and think about how he would behave towards, let's say, a very pretty woman at the gym, or a very pretty woman obviously enjoying herself with friends at a bar. Think about the things that he would unthinkingly do in a situation like that. Well, after hashtag Me Too, he's much more aware. He's much less likely to do those things that women have to put up with all day long. He's much less likely to do those things. And that's good. That's a very good thing. That should happen. Anything that can move that needle should move that needle. I think all but the most zealous fanatics would say that good impulse has occasionally been taken way, way too far. Way too far. So I don't know that it's ever gone so far as just looking at someone, but uh, I'm hoping that this sort of the fever of those initial movements is subsiding into just common courtesy. But I don't know. I don't know if that's true because if, as they say, the fish rots from the head down, well, the U.S. Supreme Court just stripped half the people in this country of a basic constitutional right, and they were women, and that's why they lost it. So I might be wrong about that. Uh, John Gabriel Borkman, LOL. Sorry about throwing a bunch of names out there, but not many booktubers discuss plays as reading experience or playwrights as great writers. Only Chekhov gets mentions, and mostly for his stories. Agreed. Agreed. I wasn't mocking you. There's no way that I can do that. People do it all the time. They say, "Hey, here's a list of people. What do you think about them?" Bye. There's no way that I can do that because I'm not Jack Edwards. I don't have trivial opinions on this. But I was only mocking the gesture. That's all. I wasn't mocking you. I know plays don't get the attention they deserve, even on BookTube, even in the good parts of BookTube, the really genuine parts of BookTube. They aren't mentioned except in direct connection with their performance on the stage, but not as reading material. Usually, not as reading material. Uh, Aaron says, speaking of Chaucer, do you think Dan Simmons achieved his implied aim with Hyperion? I love that book. I don't think it was his implied aim. I think his implied aim was to write great science fiction. So I think he achieved that. I think we put a way too much on Hyperion when we believe it's dumbass author. He wrote great science fiction. Surely that's enough. Surely that's enough. Surely we don't need any more than that. Blue Laser Ryan, Team of Rivals is a history book I always recommend to people. There you go. Yeah. And Team of Rivals on paper, on in its blueprints, should fail. Huge chunks of it are about people who aren't Abraham Lincoln. Huge chunks of it should fail. They don't. They don't. Because of the writer. It's a perfect example. Yeah, although I would be very careful who I recommend it to because most people are under the impression that of what I'm talking about, that history is this gated community that they're not allowed to enter. They need more qualifications to enter it. What kind of advanced reading should I do before I start a distant mirror? How many times did I get that question in the last 2 weeks? That's not that's people being conditioned by their reading society, by their various levels of schooling. Bad, conditioned badly. Uh, but anyway, Michael Lombardo, reason for your watch numbers tonight could be that you have a wide swath of subscribers on house arrest. Wait a minute, the ankle band is beeping out of response. It could be. You're all wicked pissa losers. uh, John Gabriel Borkman is back. Would love to hear your opinions of various different playwrights as great writers someday. Maybe a starter kit. Uh, Geo Craftsman, if this stream is doing well because it asks people directly about their experiences, then wouldn't it work even better for the STD book club? Maybe. I hadn't seen this kind of participation, this kind of focus, or these kind of numbers before I ruled that out. I did a video today. As soon as we finish talking, if we ever do, I will upload it, and then you will have your distant mirror talk for today, along with Lord of the Rings and a whole bunch of other stuff, whatever occurs to me to make a video about. Gandhi Angles, jumping in late. What did I miss? You missed a whole bunch of stuff, but it basically boils down to the only book recommendations you should ever take in your life are book recommendations from me. It's basically what it boils down to. Michael Lombardo, where did you go? No use running now. I'll find you. Where are you? Who is the translator of M, Son of the Century? Anne Milano Appel is the translator. Could be a candidate to undertake a new Dante. When was the last one done? I should know the last Dante. Oh, Tom Ellie Books is not here. I don't know what the last Dante was, but no, but no, absolutely not. No, no, absolutely not. We should definitely keep her working, but no, absolutely not. Dante does not need any more English translations. There are a million great Italian writers who do, a million of them. Let's keep her hard at work, but no Dante. No Dante. No, 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 no. Shoemaker, that seems a great video idea. Steve's thoughts on Federalist Papers. Well, I think you can, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you already know what I think about the Federalist Papers. You already know what I think about a lot of that stuff. I've made no secret of the fact. Uh, anyway, through the Enchanted Portal. Hello, Steve. What are your thoughts on reading slumps? I don't believe in them. I think they're a monstrous self-indulgence on the part of the reader. I've had readers. I knew a reader once who I meet him every week downtown Boston, and every week for 2.5 years, I would say, "How's the reading?" He'd say, "I'm still in a slump, not doing any reading," and I would say, "Okay, you're not a reader. You're not a reader. If you're not reading for 2 years, you've stopped being a reader. Just admit it. Just say I don't like reading anymore. Don't blame some sort of slump. Don't blame the books for you. But even people who don't take it to that extent, I think reading. Let's just say, I'm not saying they're not real, but they're curable. They're a hell of a lot more curable than people think they are. Uh, Jenny Parks, I'm going to head to bed. I have to be grown up and get up in a few hours to work. Well, yes, we should be wrapping this up. It has been going on for 2 hours. You shouldn't be the only one. I'm sure a lot of people in this chat want to, go unconscious and just sort of drool all over the bed for 12 hours, 15 hours, whatever. Uh, I'm sure a lot of them do. We should probably think about wrapping this up. Let's say the standard 10 past the hour. Uh, but anyway, Gandhi Angle says, loved M Some of the Century. Yes. Brilliant book. Extra Delight says, do you love Tony Kushner? I do. I also love his plays. Or the NZ says July, yes. Aaron says that is to say glass onion sucks. Okay, glad you clarified. Very glad you clarified. That reading guide, did you ever self-publish that ebook of yours on Amazon, the one on US presidents? That's up to Alex at A View from the Bar. We haven't conferred. He hasn't brought it up to me at all. I'm assuming that he's really busy. Maybe he's found another fellow. Not me at all. Maybe I've been dropped and I don't even know it. But I'm going to need his help to publish an actual ebook, and that takes a lot more work than to do a GoFundMe reward that is just a file. An ebook that goes on Amazon would have to have a lot more bells and whistles. I'd love to do it in 2023. I'll have to email him. He's been here a few times in this chat. Michael Lombardo, it's 5 minutes before 8. In anticipation of Steve kicking us out, I'll say goodnight. Always fun. Yes, we need to. We need to. This has been fantastic. Of course, this has been fantastic. My favorite Stevestream so far. Utterly fantastic to hear what you all think about how you assess. How am I reacting to this book? This book wants a lot from me. I'm in its first few chapters, and it wants a lot from me. It wants my attention. It wants me to pay attention. It wants my time. It wants all the time necessary to read the rest of it. Your mind's assessing those requests right away as you start the book. Your mind is assessing those requests, and tumblers are falling into place to figure out whether you're going to do it. And you all been indulging me enormously in talking about that subject. It's been amazingly good. Uh, uh, let's see here. That reading guy, how did an extrovert like you choose a job that has you stay home all day? Well, keep in mind, for a quarter of a century, I didn't do that. For a quarter of a century, I worked at an information desk at a busy bookstore. That got me out plenty. It's just that bookstore isn't there anymore, and I really love what I do. It's just, and fortunately, the as the fates would have it, right when I was losing that element and might have seriously missed it, I found booktube, which is good enough. It's like a methadone. It's like a methadone substitute. It's good enough for all that extrovert activity. Ravens fan 1961. Have you heard anything about a sequel to M Son of the Century being translated to English and being released in the United States? I've not. I'm sure that it will happen. I read the sequel and loved it. Absolutely loved it. I'm sure that it will happen. I just don't know when. Could be sometime. But since M Son of the Century is slated to get a paperback, I'm assuming that it's sold well enough for a 900-page book on Mussolini. Well enough. I'm 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 confident that all three of the books will be translated into English. I just don't know when. That reading guy, or if a woman decided to all be ugly, men wouldn't have to practice self-control. Come on, ladies. It's very, very difficult to get a woman to be ugly. Very difficult. They are the better looking gender. In grace, in body, in face. Uh, yeah, you're right. But it's the joke is that it's not on them. It's on men who were acting thoughtlessly boorish. Good guys who just weren't paying attention. That's all. That's all it was. Same thing with George Floyd. They just weren't paying attention. Enough attention. So you see a beautiful woman at the gym, you see a beautiful woman at a bar, even though she's clearly busy talking and laughing with her friends. Unless your consciousness is a little bit raised, sorry to use the SJW terminology, but it's true. Unless your awareness is a little bit heightened, even a good, basically decent guy might thoughtlessly ruin that moment for a woman who just wants what the guy wants. She just wants to have the experience. onto her own head of steam without needing to worry about pleasing or dealing with anyone else at all. I've seen that. I've seen what that's like. And years ago, when I was far more active outside in the world, I used to see a lot more of it. You see it too. You know exactly what I'm talking about. A pretty woman at a gym working out on a treadmill or weights with headphones. Headphones are a universal sign. Do not bother me. I'm wearing them because I don't want you to talk to me. In previous years, and I'm sure you've seen it yourself, a woman working out at a public gym wearing headphones is 200 times more likely to have a guy do this to get her to take the headphone out so he can talk to her than a man wearing headphones. A man wearing headphones at the gym simply will not be interrupted. And a woman almost certainly will be. And she's not interrupted by somebody asking where the men's room is or where the checkout desk is. She's interrupted by somebody who thinks he might be able to sleep with her. Who wants that in their day? Much less every day. That is totally unjust. That is totally wrong for that discrepancy to be there. And once I maintain, I firmly believe that once most good, decent guys realize that, they will immediately think, oh, well, I don't want to do that. You're right. I hadn't thought about that. But now that I am thinking about it, I won't ever do that again. That's all. I don't know where that guy came from. Anyway, J. Scott Phillips, when you talk about your former Friday night gatherings, it sounds like it might have been a kind of modern Algonquin roundtable. You need a Hirschfeld cartoon of those days. There are some photos. We weren't at an Algonquin roundtable, although enough wine was drunk. But there are some photos. Aaron is responding to Gandhi angles. I love G and T's as well. You wouldn't get them here. That's for sure. You wouldn't get any kind of Protestant drink here. It would be red wine. Matt Sheridan, thoughts on Doris Kearns Goodwin book on Taft and Roosevelt? I'm going to start that soon. I liked it. Trish Bovell, by horror, I recommend The Terror by Dan Simmons. Well, if we count that as horror, then sure. I hadn't thought of that when it comes to horror. Gandhi Angles, wasn't Doris Kearns Goodwin accused of plagiarism? Yes, she was. She was, by all accounts, guilty of plagiarism. Not just accused of it, but guilty of it. Uh, and she apologized, and she said, I was employing a research assistant, and that it got by me. It just plain and simple got by me. There was no nefarious intent. And she's wonderful, personally, so you certainly believe her. But it wasn't that did it. That just simply believing her, saying, "Okay, well, I hope you do better next time." No one. To the best of my knowledge, no one said, let's boycott her works from now on and burn her house down or anything like that, or give her a funny nickname that we can call her on Twitter or anything like that for an author who disobeys you what you like. But she then did the perfect thing you do if your reputation is called into question, which is that her next book was researched 10 times more thoroughly than the one that got her the plagiarism accusation and won every award that wasn't nailed down. It was made into a Steven Spielberg movie. So this is sort of the way to put the end to the discussion of people wondering if you're some sort of fraud. So it was lovely to watch. It was lovely to watch. Gypsy Rose says, haven't read that many, but I love reading plays. Spaminator, speaking of Dan Simmons, Carrying Comfort is one of the best horror novels I've ever read. Flew through all 900 pages. All right, well, the earlier comment said the Terror. If you haven't read The Terror, you should. I don't know if you would count that as a horror novel. But anyway, we need to wrap this up. It is now 13 past the hour. So we need to wrap this up. And Aaron says there is no reason to end this stream unless we're coming over for wine and calzones. Well, once upon a time, you could have one of the key. You can't now because one of the keys to those Friday nights was that I would work hard all day Friday to get every bit of work done, so that I did not have that hanging over me when everybody was here. That would, and I haven't done that tonight. So I've got, as soon as I finish the Stevestream, I'm going to upload 16 videos or whatever for BookTube, and then it's a whole night of work to do. A whole night, 4 hours of work, and then a ton of reading. So it won't work, but someday, maybe. But it doesn't matter because we have to wrap this up. We have to no. Matt Sheridan says I'll come over for beer and pizza. No. Hate the smell of pizza. Hate the smell of beer. So no. Wine and calzones. Zach says thanks for all, Steve. You are a gem on BookTube. If only BookTube thought that, but BookTube hates me. I'm a leper, a pariah, I'm an outcast. Oh well. I still have my Steve streams. I still have my. This was a great, great Steve stream. Just fantastic. Uh, just full of great bookish talk about how you all analyze your books. Taylor Brock says, "Have you thought about writing your memoir slash autobiography, maybe focused around traveling, dogs, and books? Book title: Steve Donahue: A Life of Travel, Dogs, and Books." Well, the title has been mentioned on this channel many times. It is Odd Dog, and I have thought about it many times. I've written huge chunks of it, but not the whole thing. Odd Dog is still a theoretical thing, but uh, we have to wrap this up. It's now 15 past the hour. We have to wrap this up. It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. I loved it. I had a bunch of questions to ask about how you assess books, and we've had a great time talking about it. Fantastic. So we will convene tomorrow. Should I make a video earlier? Should I do a Steve stream earlier tomorrow? See if maybe that's more people or fewer people? I don't know. I don't know what it would be. We shall see. We shall see. I will see what's open and I will experiment. But anyway, until then, I'm going to bid you all a fondue. But I will be back. Thank you all so much. These are so much fun.